meeting this morning. Alison, the recording of the meeting has just started. Thank you. Thank you for that one. Before we start going through the agenda, I just want to note a change to the items on the agenda this morning, in that we're going to take item 11, the cancer delivery plan, before we take item 10, the financial recovery plan. So those do just in a slightly different order. Item 11 before item 10. But other than that, the agenda is as it is. So thank you very much for noting that. Apologies for this morning. I have Anne Bell, Joyce Duncan, Hussein Patwa, and David Blackburn will be joining later during this meeting. I think that's it, Alison. I don't think there's any others to record. Thank you. Any declarations of interest this morning, please? No declarations of interest. Thank you very much for that. And now turn to a proper welcome to everybody, and I'm really pleased indeed to see everybody here this meeting. Welcome to everyone who's joining us, colleagues and guests, to this June meeting of NHS Grampian's board. Among the updates we are receiving today are the Chief Executive's report, our recent escalation to stage 3 on the Scottish Government support and intervention framework, and details of our financial recovery plan, all of which shine a spotlight on our challenging current position. So before we move to substantive items on today's agenda, I would like to highlight some recent positive news from NHS Grampian that helps to demonstrate inclusivity, innovation, positive change, and the exemplary care that continues to be delivered every single day despite these challenges. Firstly, I want to recognise 2 milestones which happen to benefit women, children and families. A state-of-the-art 3D laparoscopic camera has been installed at Dr. Gray's Hospital, which will help ensure the best outcomes for women undergoing surgical procedures such as hysterectomies and laparoscopies. It comes as we expand the range of services and procedures we can carry out in Elgin, and should mean a greater number of patients and their families can benefit from undergoing these procedures closer to home. And speaking of expanding services, since our last board meeting, the planned cesarean sections have resumed in Murray. This marks a major milestone in the return of enhanced maternity services to Dr. Gray's, and has happened months ahead of schedule, thanks to the successful planning, training and recruitment efforts of staff. Really would like to thank everyone who's been involved in those projects at Dr. Gray's in Elgin. Thank you. Moving on to other positive news, NHS Grampian has successfully rolled out an image capture solution that supports dermatology referrals from primary care to secondary care, a critical step in the prioritisation process. The digital dermatology project has launched across multiple GP practices in Grampian, with more to follow. Through robust, high-quality image vetting, patient outcomes can be improved, whilst unnecessary appointments and clinical time can be reduced and reallocated to those who need it most, supporting therefore reduced waiting times. Again, thank you to everybody involved in that work. These are just a handful of the many positive stories we have to tell, and which demonstrate that Team Grampian has cause to look to the future with hope, with optimism, as long as we continue to work collaboratively together. So thank you to all. Last weekend, NHS Grampian once again took part in the Grampian Pride Parade in Aberdeen. This annual celebration of inclusivity and positivity saw over 5,000 people bring all the colours of the rainbow to the city centre, and provided an opportunity for us to demonstrate our organisation's support of LGBTQIA+ colleagues, patients and individuals living across the region. I was delighted to carry our banner during the parade. So, as both a metaphorical and a literal standard bearer for the organisation, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who take part, who supported us from afar as well, without whom the event would not be possible. Thank you to all. Earlier this month as well, NHS Grampian celebrated Volunteers Week, a UK-wide opportunity to recognise the contribution of the selfless individuals who give their time and energy so freely. From wayfinding and gardening to listening and befriending, they make a hugely positive contribution to the experience of patients accessing our services and our premises. It may interest the board to know that since Volunteers Week last year, an average of 214 active NHS Grampian volunteers per month have given over 15,000 hours of their time in total. And this year, 69 NHS Grampian volunteers received certificates, marking a combined 310 years of voluntary service, the longest serving being 30 years. I know I speak on behalf of all board members when I say just how deeply we appreciate their generosity of time and also their commitment. Thank you to all those volunteers. Fantastic work. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our dedicated staff and colleagues who are all doing so much currently to enable the delivery of health and care across Grampian, as well as the development work that is underway or planned as we move towards a sustainable future. The work of everyone, colleagues right across the system, is very much appreciated. Thank you. And before we move to our formal business, I would also like to acknowledge the huge contribution that Susan Webb, our Director of Public Health, has made to the work of the board over many years. This is Susan's last board meeting with us as she moves on to a new role elsewhere. Susan has been a tremendous help as we develop our approach to prevention, to a more sustainable service across the Grampian area as well and across the whole system, and that engagement across the system has been particularly valuable as well. So really appreciate all the fantastic inspirational work that Susan has done in her time with us. Thank you very much, Susan, and wish you very well in the future career that you're following as well. Thank you very much for all you've done for us in Grampian. Okay. With that then, we move on to the formal business of the agenda. And the first item is item 4, the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of April 2025. Can we agree those minutes as an accurate record, please? Thank you. I can't see any other voices. So yes, we accept those minutes. Thank you very much. And we have from that the action tracker and matters arising. We have quite a detailed action tracker following on from last meeting. Are we happy with what's recorded in there and the actions that have been carried out in response? Okay, so thank you very much for that then. Thank you very much for the action tracker and for everyone who's carrying out those actions on it as well. Very much appreciate that too. And then we move then to item 5, the Chief Executive's report. Adam, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everyone. The first item I was updating on, and there's clearly some overlap with the next formal paper on the agenda. There's a couple of things I wanted to pick out here about the escalation of NHS Grampian to level 4 of the support and intervention framework within Scottish Government. I guess the first bit I was really keen to emphasise, Alison's just given some really great examples of what our teams and our colleagues do every single day. And I really wanted to emphasise that despite some of those particular things that Alison picked up, just the day-to-day work of our colleagues is immense, and we see and treat and support thousands of people every day, and that works really, really well for the vast majority of patients that we see on a day-to-day basis, and that's a real tribute to our staff and how they work on a day-to-day basis. In terms of the escalation, clearly it's an extremely serious issue and relates primarily to our financial position, which again as a board we've been working away at for the last really 2 years since we first posted a deficit position. I genuinely welcome the support that we're getting from the government through this externally commissioned KPMG diagnostic. We've certainly struggled to find the scale of savings that we need to, and so I'm really optimistic that this external support from an organisation who have done this lots and lots of times, predominantly in England as I understand it, will be able to find things that we've simply not been able to identify ourselves. So I'm optimistic about that and think as a whole organisation we absolutely need to approach this with a really positive aspect to see what we can learn and then what we can make changes to live within that resource envelope that we're given to support the health and care of the northeast of Scotland. The next bit was just a wee update on the acute pathway integration. We spoke about this at the last board meeting. This is making positive progress, and I've written a little bit there. I'm very happy to take any questions on that, but won't say any more just by way of introduction. And then just the last bit was really just to set out around the delivery plan with our escalation, we're really clear that the delivery plan will undoubtedly change and what we've set out. So again, as a board, you've seen our draft, you've seen what we've given the government as a draft. We anticipate in discussion with government that might well change as we get the recovery plan following the diagnostic and have a realistic assessment about what we can deliver through 25-26 years. So again, we'll keep the board absolutely fully updated on that as that unfolds and we understand what will be realistic within that space. Thanks, Alison. That's me.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you to you and the executive team as well for all the work you're doing. It's thanking everybody else, but we need to pass our thanks to you and the executive team as well. So I'll do that there as well. Any questions or comments for Adam following his report there, please? Dennis, please.
Thank you, Adam, for that. And yourself, Alison, for your very positive message about NHS Grampian. Adam, basically, you've said about the day-to-day work of the staff, and I mean, I know that there's undoubtedly people are working as hard and as professional as they do, and they're very committed. But in terms of the escalation, how do you envisage ensuring that we keep our staff updated on the progress of the escalation, and again, or the wider community, that is the public, of that escalation? How do you envisage that we can keep people informed of the progress and any changes that may have to occur after the diagnostics have reported back? Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Dennis. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I think that's a really key issue. So my sense of the approach and timeline, I'm thinking of it, is we're going to receive the diagnostic in, I think the second week of July is the target date at the moment that we've been given. And we will undoubtedly be under you know, a need and a pressure to develop a delivery plan really very, very quickly. Obviously, the money needs to start recovering as quickly as it can. That said, I think the development of the delivery plan is really critical, that we get as many people involved as we can, and we get you know, support and advice from the advisory structure, from the partnership forum, and hopefully those teams can do work with their teams, as well as obviously through the normal management structure. And in fact, myself and Hugh were at the area medical committee last night, and again there was a very generous offer from them, from the GP sub, from the consultant subcommittee, to absolutely work out with their normal pattern to contribute and make sure that we've got a really robust recovery plan. That meaning we've got real skin in the game from our colleagues that will need to deliver it. I think your further issue about how do we work with the broader public, with our population, that's going to be critical as well. And there will be a real tension between the speed that we need to develop the delivery plan at and the ability to get really deep penetration into the population. I think that's a really key bit of thinking and work we need to do to see how we find the sweetest spot we can for speed, but engagement and involvement. And I guess the bit I'd build on is the putting people first ethos that we have as a board, and how do we bring in lots of the relationships we're already developing on that ongoing basis. So rather than that idea of low down the ladder of just consulting, how do we build on all of the work that lots and lots of teams have been doing with lots and lots of communities over a period of time to bring that expert knowledge in to how we form that recovery plan. So I think it's a bit of a both and on those parts. But for me, the recovery plan will be most successful if we get as much skin in the game from as many people as we can to actually deliver it, because undoubtedly it will be difficult. You know, I think the scale of the challenges is very significant. So to be successful, we need lots of people to own it. Thanks, Alice.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for that. Mark, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Adam, for your report. It's going back to the integrated acute pathways, and obviously thank you for engaging with Area Clinical Forum on a very regular basis, and I think I highlighted that in my paper to the board today. Going back to obviously endoscopy and orthopedics seem to be making very good progress, but I wondered if you could maybe give me some more time frames around the cardiology, please. Obviously indicates clinical diaries permitting, but I think it'd be important to understand how that's going to progress with some kind of speed. And obviously, see Paul's indicating he's probably the one that will give me the update on that. Thank you.
Paul,
If that's
do you want to
okay,
come in?
Alison.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
pass
course.
to Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark, for that question. And whilst we recognise that there's been a slow lag period relative to the orthopaedics and endoscopy, by the end of June, as our original timelines pointed, we would be delivering both the vetting and the waiting list commonality coming together of cardiology services. And that will also include the vetting of echo requests. So this is a significant improvement. It isn't anything that I think, if I'm honest, we hadn't anticipated. We acknowledged at the beginning that there are unique and different things for each of the pathways that needed resolving or consideration. And some are technical things that occur on databases, and some are human systems. And the human systems always take longer, as we all know. And I think we are in a very good position compared to where we were last week. And the work of, I think, Christina Cameron and all of the teams that sit in that particular service review pathway really are building momentum now. Job still to do, but good improvement. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Is that assuring to you?
Yes, and obviously we'll work with the chief executive team and with the triumvirate as much as we can, but it's just I'd like to see some traction on that if possible. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Alison. Adam, thank you for the report. And like Alison, I would echo her comments about the exceptional amount of work that yourself and your colleagues in the chief executive team are doing, particularly in relation to the escalation to level 4 on the Scottish Government's escalation process. I guess on that, and just while clearly there is item 4 on this agenda goes into far more detail, your observations about the external diagnostic review and the fact that KPMG will or have a lot of experience in England. I guess given the nature of this public meeting, it is worth stating that the terms and conditions of employment and the so much of the context in Scotland is actually fundamentally different. So what may be possible in terms of changing service delivery, changing how staff are deployed, can be done in a very different way south of the border than it can be in Scotland. So I'll stop there, and you won't be surprised to learn that I've got quite a lot to say when we get into the substantive item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's a really key point. Adam, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah. So I think just a couple of comments. I think everyone recognises that, Stephen, and in my discussion with government before they commissioned it, because we saw the draft commission of the external review, we absolutely made the point about it having to be deliverable within a Scottish context. So in the publicly available not commissioning, procurement document that government put out for it, they were very clear about the Scottish context and things. So I think everyone recognises that. And then the second part, which I've certainly taken assurance from, is that again in the commission for the external provider, is that what they come up with has to be realistic and deliverable and all those things. So that clearly needs to take into account the T's and C's and the context of the Scottish employment approach for staff within the NHS.
Thanks, Adam, for confirming that. Alex, are you going to come in on that as well?
Yeah, just to try and give Stephen a little bit of assurance in that space. So, when we've done this type of exercise before, there has been a validation process. And, during that validation process, then we will get an opportunity to put forward, our views around about, the deliverability of the savings within our systems context. And that would include in relation to how it would impact on some of the matters that you've discussed there.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for that assurance, Alex and Adam. Thank you. Bert.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to go back to the remarks from Paul in response to Mark's question about progress in relation to acute integration. Paul, you referred to human systems. I wonder if you could just explain to me a little bit more about what you mean by that. I'd like to understand more about that, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Paul, can you help, please?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to respond to that. I think in outline, we have two very long established services with long established ways of doing things, both at the individual level and also in two very different teams. One, a big team with lots of interactions between lots of different bits of a cardiology service. Those that occur in a cath lab, those that occur in the community, those that occur in radiology, and those that occur completely in an outpatient. And we have another service run by a single clinician with a clinical support service that work across not only two different sites with 65 miles in between, but also within interactions of the community. So bringing that level of complexity together into a single agreed pathway with agreed protocols, with agreed ways of working, when there is so much variation because there is no robust randomized clinical trial evidence to say this is the way to do it. There are principles. So I think that's really where a lot of the work is going to get done in bringing those correct but different things harmonized into a single, efficient, structured, kind of repeatable fashion.
Bert, do you want to come back?
Yes, if I may, please. Yes, so thank you for that, Paul. I'd just like to ask how confident you are in that you're going to be able to achieve that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think I would be confident in saying that everybody involved in this change process has one thing at the center of everything they do, and that's patient care. So based on the fact that everything that we're doing is for patient care and that everybody involved focuses completely on patient care, I think, it is natural to be confident that we will get there. But we will get there through honest conversations and through critical challenge.
That's helpful. Thank you, Paul, for that. Bert, are you assured by Paul's contribution there as well?
Yes, I'm assured that the work is underway and what the aim is. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Bert. Thank you, and thank you, Paul, for answering that. Mark, just come in.
It was really on following on Paul's point there, and I would just emphasise that as absolutely the driving factors that must be behind all of this. The patients must be treated and through an equitable pathway, and hopefully all of the teams are heading in that direction collectively and collaboratively. So I just welcome Paul's thoughts on that. Thank you. Thank you.
I think Paul wants a final word to emphasise that point again. Thank you.
No, I promise it's the final word, and unnatural to me. I'm doing a lot of talking today. I think one of the things that really helps in this honest conversation to deliver what Bert is asking is how we are maturing in how we use data. Right? I think our data that we have available has always been accurate, but it's how we're using that data and relating it to patient experience, patient care, and patient impacts. That storytelling using data analytics is, I think, been tremendously helpful in winning hearts and minds, which is the basis of all of this change work. So that's why I think we should be confident. Thanks.
Yeah, and delivering for patients across our community is absolutely essential. Yes, thank you very much for that. Adam, this was on the back of the Chief Executive's report. So do you want to come back with anything?
No, I'm happy with everything that's been said. Thanks, Alison.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we were asked to note the Chief Executive's report. I think we can say we've done that. So thank you for noting that report, and comments very well received as well. Thank you. And so we move on to item 6, the NHS Grampians escalation to stage 4, support and intervention. I'm going to turn again to Adam to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alison. So there's clearly a bit of overlap with our initial bit of discussion, but the emphasis in this formal paper rather than my report is really the technical parts of what's happened and hopefully recorded, and obviously in the appendices people can see the dialogue that's happened, and also there is a Scottish Government page in their website that will allow people to follow progress of the Assurance Board once that's established, and we can share that with everyone so that that's available. I'm really clear we'll be communicating lots, so I don't think there'll be anything there that we don't communicate. But again, it's just a resource that people can go to see what's happening. So the couple of bits I just wanted to pick up by way of introduction here was beyond what I've said before, was really that the kick-off meeting with KPMG took place last week, and I think the really key bit to emphasise is that the stage 4 escalation, we are still absolutely in charge of our system, and it's up to us to develop the recovery plan, to deliver the recovery plan and all those things. So again, one of the key things with colleagues, what I was saying earlier about having ownership of our plan, you know, it is our plan for our system that we're absolutely in charge of. So that's the really key spirit of making progress with this, and there will be an Assurance Board that's, you know, holding us to account and all those things, but that's to assure government, and all the governance absolutely remains and sits with NHS Grampian Board and all those things. So I think that's a really important thing to say out loud and in this public space. And then just the other wee bit of update since we wrote this is KPMG have now started. They undertook a number of interviews yesterday, and they're meeting with lots of people, and as was said earlier, they're looking at lots of data and all those sorts of things to try and do the analysis. Really happy to take any questions around these technical bits that are here. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Adam, for the introduction. Do any members have any questions or comments for Adam on this paper, please? Colette, please.
Adam, thank you for that update, and thank you for the paper. I think something that would be well worth setting out for the purposes of this meeting are your plans to communicate with staff throughout the process. So would you like to set that out for everyone, please?
A very helpful question, Colette. Thank you. Adam.
Yeah, thanks. So a bit like I said before, I think there's all the formal mechanisms of trying to engage people, which is part of the communication, and then we will absolutely carry on in the same vein that we have done over the last month since we were escalated. We've been putting something in the daily brief every week. We continue to hold town halls, people able to ask questions on video of myself and Alison. Myself and Alison have done some videos. So the aim is to continue to do lots of regular small bite-sized chunks that keep people absolutely up to speed with what we're doing, and we'll use as many different mediums as we can as we go forward, and also think about how we share the formal parts from the Assurance Board externally, and obviously what we're doing as NHS Grampian through lots of these regular mechanisms, as well as what we'd expect normally through the management cascade system and all those things as well.
Okay, Colette, happy? Yeah, thank you, Colette. Thank you. Mark, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. And Adam, I'm sure you're well aware that Area Clinical Forum will want to absolutely engage with this process. We've engaged already, and obviously coming on the Cabinet Secretary's description on May 29th, and was intimated that Partnership and Area Clinical Forum would be actively involved in this. So it's just that continuing support from ACF that we'd like to be engaged with this as we have been, and through the advisory structures. It's reassuring to hear that you went to the Area Medical Committee, which you do on many, many occasions. And from what I gather, there was very positive feedback from our colleagues in Area Medical Committee, GP Sub and Consultant Subcommittee to help with this. So it's just a as always, a collaborative approach from ACF, and we welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just thank you, Mark, for all the work you're doing to help support that collaboration as well, to make sure everything's done in a timely and appropriate way as well. So really appreciate your own engagement with that as well. I'll just take Stephen and come back to you, Adam, as well, I think. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Yes, you're like Mark. Grampian Area Partnership Forum fully intends to be as cooperative and collaborative as it can be, particularly through both elements, the assurance board and the external diagnostic review. So if that means that there are opportunities for members of GAPF to participate in the external diagnostic review in particular, and like Mark, I welcome the announcement from the Cabinet Secretary that the partnership and clinical advisory structures are to be engaged in the insurance board. But of course, we wait to see how that will work out in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, and appreciate your own contribution to all this as well. Thank you very much. Alex, are you coming in on this point as well?
Yeah, just to say that I contacted KPMG earlier in the week and had asked for both advisory structures to be included within the external diagnostic review, and I think the last time we undertook an exercise like this, Stephen was certainly involved in some of the latter stages of the validation sort of exercise, so we can look to line that up again with Stephen and Mark in that process too.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that as well. John, just turn to you. John.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for the report. I think the answer to this is a simple yes, but just to be absolutely clear, so the recovery plan over 3 years, we're expecting a robust plan covering all of the reductions that need to be made over that period, and that would be the definition of the recovery plan, not just for the first 12 months, but for all of that 36 months. Is that the case?
Yeah, Alex, do you want to comment there?
Yeah, I mean, if you see on the agenda today and at the last meeting, we did talk about a financial recovery plan over 3 years, and we said we would come back in October with some information on that. We may be able to come back sooner as a result of the external diagnostic review, but we'll certainly keep on working our way through that. But I would expect, in relation to what you're saying in terms of the financial element of the recovery, that we will be specifying the areas where potential savings may be generated. So that would be my intention as a result of that 3-year recovery plan. The other element, the wider element about the leadership and governance side of things, I suspect there'll be an improvement plan developed in that space, and will be some of that information will come out of the external diagnostic review as well.
Thank you, John. Are you content with that?
Yes, no, that's clear. And there's a later report, so I can come back on some of that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Adam, do you want to close and off with anything in this paper, please?
No, just my thanks for the ongoing support from the advisory structure and the Area Partnership Forum, and really of everyone that's been involved so far from our colleagues through. So hopefully we can, genuinely approach this with the positive spirit that it offers us, despite the huge challenge that it offers and all those things. So thanks, Alison.
Yeah, no, indeed, it's a huge challenge, but it's also hopefully an opportunity as well to work together in a good, collaborative, positive way. So thank you for that. Okay, shall we turn to the recommendations on this? I can't see anyone else indicating. To note that the board's escalation level has been increased to stage 4 for financial sustainability, leadership and governance on the NHS Scotland support and intervention framework. Can we note that, please? Thank you. Thank you all. All right, then. Now we turn to the forum reports. Again, these are for noting, but the first one, 7.1, the Area Clinical Forum. I'll turn to Mark to introduce this, please. Mark.
Thanks very much, Chair. Obviously, you have the report in front of you. Just to highlight that this was a report from the 7th of May 2025, and therefore we had not been escalated to stage 4 at this stage, and therefore there was no reference made to it at that time. I think building on some of my discussion I've just had, I think the weekly Area Clinical Forum CET meetings are proving absolutely essential to have that collaborative approach. The integrated group pathways has obviously been one of the focuses that we've been looking at, and obviously I've already asked Adam a little bit about that on the Chief Executive's report. And some of the really positive things I'm seeing from, you can see the Area Medical Committee, I think much more positivity coming out of that committee, and I think that has to be credited to the leadership, and the chair of that particular committee is driving that forward. So I think we welcome that. And obviously some of the other concerns you'll see coming from our allied healthcare professionals was around enteral feeding products, and this obviously is a national problem, but I think there's been a task force set up for that, but it was raised as being quite a high level concern from their point of view. But the rest of the report is in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for bringing those matters to our attention as well. It's really helpful to have that here too. Any questions or comments from Mark, please? No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for your comprehensive written report and oral report as well. Very much appreciate that, Mark. Thank you. Okay, so we can note the Area Clinical Forum report. Thank you. And then move to 7.2, the Grampian Area Partnership Forum report. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as similar to Mark, the report that's before you actually reflects the March, April and May meetings of Grampian Area Partnership Forum, which again meant that it didn't include the escalation to stage 4. So hence why that's not reflected in the report. I suppose one positive thing I would wish to acknowledge is the exceptional work done by Ted Reid and colleagues in the Facilities and Estates around getting us to a place with Aberdeen City Council where we now have a 2-year temporary agreement from the Council's Planning Department to allow staff to continue to park in the upper levels of the Lady Helen parking centre, particularly with the huge amount of system pressure and demand in our services on our biggest and busiest site. It is welcome news, and considering just how much concern has been expressed over the past sort of 12-18 months on this issue, so that's particularly welcome. It is clearly a temporary measure at this stage, but the ball is clearly in the court of both NHS Grampian and its staff to demonstrate that we're able to comply with your parking management plan, etc., and hopefully move to a situation where that temporary position can become permanent. So we certainly wish to acknowledge that, but as the report is there, so happy to take any questions colleagues may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that, and the update on the car park as well. Any questions or comments from anyone on the GAPF papers, please? Kathleen, please. Oh, sorry, Richie was first. I'll do Richie first and then Kathleen. Sorry, Richie.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alison. Just a minor one. I noticed at the bottom of page 37, it talks about the nursery fees being less expensive, and I do note the choice of words there, not cheap but less expensive. I guess just assurance that it's still set at that kind of appropriate kind of level that gives the benefit to our staff in terms of providing support to work, but isn't so low that perhaps we're missing out some income. So just assurance we're content that we've got that balance right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. In fact, I am very relieved to see that Philip's put his hand up. So Philip and his and particularly his colleague Lorraine Hunter are absolutely cited in the detail. But I certainly GAPF felt assured. So I'll let Philip come in and answer the specifics. Thanks.
Thank you.
No, thanks very much, and always happy to help you out, Stephen. So, as Stephen said, Lorraine, the nurseries sit under Lorraine Hunter, who's the head of the HR Service Centre. They did a very comprehensive review to compare the fees for our nurseries against all the other providers in Aberdeen. We do have the advantage of being able to do salary sacrifice as well. So with the inclusion of salary sacrifice, we do provide a good value nursery service, but we are not missing out in terms of making it too cheap to provide you with that reassurance. So if you wish, we can provide that comparison alongside the note of this, just to give you that extra reassurance, but it was a very comprehensive piece of work. So yeah, we are not missing out on an opportunity, nor we are disadvantaging our staff. So I think we've got the balance about right when you see that comparison with the other providers.
Hi, Richie. Would that comparison be useful, or are you content with the answer there?
I'm content. It's just that I guess you sure that thought process had gone through. So no, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richie, Philip and Stephen for that. Kathleen, please.
Yeah, thank you. No, Richie stole my thunder on the first question. I was going to ask exactly the same thing. But my other question was just really under the concerns and staff experience about the access to private changing facilities. I just wanted to know how that was progressing and if it was taking into account, obviously, the change in definitions recently put forward.
Yeah, I think it's again Philip who's going to answer this one. So yeah, Stephen's nodding at me. I will turn to Philip. Thank you.
Yes, it did. So at GAPF, we had identified that there was a need to consider the private changing facilities, storage, and access to areas for breaks. That consideration had been taken in advance of the Supreme Court ruling. So the action from GAPF was we need to just reconsider that commission in light of that outcome. So it's not been referred to in here and report back to GAPF. When we meet again in the next couple of weeks in terms of the decision that's been taken. But subject to GAPF approval, we've decided to continue with the storage facilities and space for breaks and wait until we have further guidance in terms of those shared changing facilities. That's in advance of GAPF kind of formally agreeing that, but that's the proposal we're going to take back to GAPF in a couple of weeks' time.
I think that's really important, the GAPF role in this. I think that's central with the staff involvement throughout. Kathleen, do you want to comment on anything else?
No, that's answered my questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for asking, Kathleen, as well. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Stephen on the GAPF report? No? No, thank you for those questions then. And we can agree that we've noted the report, I hope. Thank you. And then move to 7.3, the Integration Joint Boards report. And Judith Proctor is going to introduce this one. Thank you, Judith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and morning, Board. This month you've got in front of you the high-level summary report from the 3 IGBs and links to the most recent approved minutes of each. Given that the most recent minutes from Aberdeenshire and Moray were in March, a significant focus of these you'll see related to the budget setting, and that's also reflected in the minute. However, we've also given you a summary report from both Moray and Aberdeenshire on the wider elements that were picked up in both those meetings, and the papers from Aberdeen's most recent meetings also appended for your interest. All 3 IGBs have met since March in May. However, the minutes of these haven't yet been approved. They will come to you in next month's usual update. I'm very happy to take any questions I can. Obviously, I'll be better placed to answer any questions that relate to Moray than the other 3, but I will do my best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Judith. Have we got any questions or comments from members, please, today? I would like to start with one myself then, Judith, about, obviously we've been through the budget setting process and each of the IGBs has set its budget. Could you maybe just talk to us about any collaborative work that went on across the system before those budgets were set and how that is placed for going forward as well? Thank you.
Yes, happy to do that, Chair. Yes, and we work very closely as 3 chief officers for each of the IJBs, and also with our teams. We had a very productive meeting just pre-Christmas when obviously we were well into our budget setting process and those discussions, just in terms of where there were opportunities for shared savings or working together in a way that would benefit the whole system. A number of those things have come forward that we'll be working through and will emerge in budget setting for next year. So a lot of discussions that are underway, and some of those relate to work around policies, for example, that may be different in each of our areas, where they relate to social care in particular, where we could be working together to propose and recommend harmonisation of approaches that gives a sort of fairer position across Grampian where that's appropriate. So we're doing some work on that now. Also discussions in relation to where we can optimise shared services within some of our NHS delegated services. We're having those discussions in relation to how we support the management of primary care contracts, for example. As an opportunity there for us to be strengthening the joined up approach. We meet very regularly on this, and we'll have another session with our wider whole senior teams coming up in July, where we'll be hopefully going further in terms of potential for next year's budget setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith. That's very helpful. Just as a follow-up to that as well, does that collaborative work also involve consideration of impact of the decisions on either the councils or the NHS as well as part of that work? Is that part of the discussions in those forum? Thank you.
Yes, I think in setting our budgets and making proposals to the IGB, both the chief officers and the IGBs in particular as the decision-making body, are having those conversations about the impact of budget settings on the people that we support and obviously have a statutory responsibility for. And I think first and foremost, we want to have that consideration of impacts on people and communities, but also the impact in terms of our partner organisations, and indeed vice versa, the impact of decisions there on IGB budgets and delegated budgets, and I think that's an important consideration for us all. I think I would say, and I've probably said before in this forum, and certainly in our IGB, we've got good, strong partnerships with our funding partners, and certainly from a Moray perspective, I meet every 6 weeks with our Director of Finance, with Alex, and his counterparts in Moray Council, and we work on a very open book approach across all three partners, which is incredibly helpful as we all grapple with the challenges that we sit with.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. Thank you, Judith. Okay, any other? Dennis, a question from Dennis.
Yeah, morning again, Judith. It really, we've focused on the finance quite a bit, but I'm just wondering, in terms of the work the chief officers are doing on a collaborative basis with the primary care partners, in terms of provision of service in the community and the prevention agenda, and that is working in a whole system to try and prevent people at the front door, say, of NHS Grampian. How well do you think that approach is currently, what stage it's at in terms of working with the primary care partners? And given the recent escalation, do you envisage that you'll be meeting more regular with our primary care partners to look at ways in which we can all collaborate together moving forward? Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Judith?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dennis. And I think, can I just check, by primary care partners, are you referring to our contractors, GPs, dentists, pharmacists and others? Yeah, absolutely. We meet regularly with them, both in our individual health and social care partnerships and through our clinical leads, as well as through the sort of wider work that we do as a trio of chief officers and through the GP visioning work. I think there's huge potential in that, and lots of discussions that we're having at the moment do relate to, how can we go further in primary and community care to support that whole system working. There are opportunities, I think, through the integration of acute pathways work to be thinking about what elements of that, with the appropriate shift in the balance of resources, and recognising that we can't just keep absorbing with no additional resources. What could we do differently in a primary and community care setting that would support that whole system? So it's a very important part of our consideration through both the GP visioning work as well as our local discussions. So, and that's not just with GPs. I think, the work that we do pharmacy first with our pharmacy colleagues is hugely important in that, as the first port of call, and of course how our review of GMED will work to also support that agenda, so that we've got, good round the clock primary care cover. Hope that answered your question, Dennis.
Okay, I can see Dennis nodding, so thank you, Judith. Thank you. Richie?
Yeah, hi, Judith. Just welcome that collaboration across the system, across the three IGBs, and also with the NHSG team in finance in particular. And this is maybe, I'll save my question perhaps for the financial recovery plan itself, in terms of the reduced financial risk provision for IGBs. So it's really just to give you a heads up that it'll be good to cover that perhaps under that paper. But thanks for the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. Thank you. And Sandy, please.
Thanks, Alison, and thanks for the report, Judith. I suppose just from my point of view, I just thinking about community organisations and the public and the anxiety that people will be feeling just now. There's a lot of discussion around policies, systems and processes and so forth. And I just want to get a sense from you in terms of how are we engaging across the three IGBs with our locality group and structures and our community representatives, so that they feel on board, that it's not all abstract and discussion and decisions are taking place somewhere else, and they are co-designing with us what that future may look like. Could you just give us a sense if there's a kind of coherent approach to that across the 3 IGBs?
Thank you, Sandy, and it's a really, really important question. I probably couldn't say there was a coherent approach across all 3, i.e. that we all do the same things in the same way, but I think there's absolutely a core value and principle across all 3 integration joint boards and partnerships that we work at a locality level to engage with community and community groups. And the reason it might not look the same is because of our different geographies and setups around localities, but I think the principles of the importance of that work would be key to all 3. And obviously I couldn't talk in detail about Aberdeenshire or Aberdeen City, but I think I could reassure that, you know, it's a core component of how we have discussions about service design, redesign and around the budget. In Moray, as you're aware, you know, we have 4 localities, and there's quite a depth of locality engagement and locality work that takes place, and we'll look to strengthen that, in particular when we've got difficult decisions that we, you know, come forward with. I think what's important around that, of course, is not just the challenge of consulting if we come up with something difficult. It's the point that you made around how are we collaborating and co-producing and coming up with new and different ways of working that can be generated by the community. So again, that's a really important principle. I would add, however, that, you know, as sometimes we are having to think about the balance of our workforce and some of the savings that we're needing to make, our capacity around those things is sometimes challenged. And I think what we try and do is, as you know, in our discussions through the board, is preserve whatever we can of the capacity to ensure that we can continue to do that important work. So yes, I think a key principle for all 3 of us, we maybe do it in slightly different ways, but I think opportunities to learn from one another. And I certainly was looking at the work that was done in Aberdeen City around the approaches that they took to more digital collaboration. So how do you engage with people through IT, online surveys, etc., just to make it easier for people as well as for our teams doing that work.
Thank you for that, Judith. Sandy, are you assured by the answer there?
I think that's really helpful. I think that you know, I don't disagree with anything you say, Judith. Absolutely. I suppose my point is that those that feel the impact of change most acutely are members of the public, and there's a lot of anxiety around at the moment. I think that some of the best ideas and some of the real experts in our services are members of the public, and I think to make sure that they're fully involved early on is critical, because they will come up with really good ways of doing things maybe slightly differently that will have greater impact for the same amount of resource. So I'll welcome hearing more about that as time goes by. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. I'd echo how important that work is, and how also important is the point Judith made about, you know, looking at other parts of the IGBs within Grampian as well, and learning from each other as well about how to do that and achieve the aims that you're talking about there, Sandy. So thank you very much for the question and highlighting that. Judith, do you want to conclude with any comments, or are you happy with that?
Very happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Judith. We're asked then to note the integration joint board papers. So can we note this paper, please? Thank you very much for noting those. Okay, and now we turn to item 8, the How Are We Doing report. This is obviously a very, very detailed, in-depth report on our performance that has already been discussed in detail through the PAFIC committee, performance committee. Sandy, do you want to confirm that it's been through that process for me, please? Thank you.
Yes, I can confirm that. I put my hand up because I will want to come in after some introductory comments. But and just for those joining this meeting who don't know what PAFIC is, it's the Performance Assurance, Finance and Infrastructure Committee.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and I would like to turn actually to Adam to introduce this paper here we've got in front of us today, because it's obviously a very in-depth paper with lots of information about performance, about our finance, and about the progress that NHS Grampian is making across the piece. And within that, it's really important to be able to look within that and pick out from it the key challenges that NHS Grampian is facing, and also what is being done to address those as well. So I will turn first of all to Adam, please, to maybe tell us what, in your view, what are the 3 challenges from this that NHS Grampian is facing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. And I'm really pleased to just, I guess, try and pick up some of the conversation from PAFIC, and one of the conclusions from PAFIC, as I'm sure Sandy and Alex and Preston will expand on, is that sense of how do we have enough information but not too much, and have it presented in a way that's really accessible but still gives the right depth. And I'll not say any more on that. Others will comment on that as that work develops. There's lots of people around the room, and we've been joined by some further people to help answer any detailed questions. But I think that the key question you were framing to me, Alison, is if I had to pick a small number of things, what would I say were the key aspects for NHS Grampian at the moment? And I'll take 4 if that's okay, rather than 3. So I think the 4 things that we need to really worry away at is, and these are quite high level, is planned care, unplanned care, prevention to make sure we're continuing to look forward in that change, and then the money, and we've already spoken about that, and there's plenty more on the money. So just a couple of comments on each of those, if that's okay. So planned care, we're clearly in a position that is far from ideal. We've got too many people waiting for too long for both outpatients and inpatient procedures. So what are we doing about it? So I think for planned care, we've got a really good sort of phase 1 plan that's going to see dramatic reductions in particularly long people waiting a long period of time, and also absolutely improve the cancer performance. And again, I won't say any more on cancer because Paul's got a comprehensive paper coming on that later on. I guess the important thing to emphasise about that planned care change is that's a plan we've got with government that's been supported to a large sum of money to allow us to do that additional activity. However, the additional activity is hand in glove with productivity improvements, how we select people on lists to make sure we bring down the tail, as well as how do we make theatres as productive as possible, booking as effective as possible, all those things. So there's both improvement and additional capacity, and phase 2 plan is being worked on, really hard at the moment to see how we get the residual part that isn't yet covered by our plan. Part of that will undoubtedly include this sort of idea of mutual support that's been spoken a lot throughout the country, and about how other boards will be able to support us with some of the activity that we simply cannot do in the timescale in Grampian. So planned care, starting in a position that absolutely needs improvement, but a pretty good plan in place to resolve that. Unscheduled care, we have real challenges in unscheduled care, and again, they're very well rehearsed through both committees of the board and indeed at the board level. I guess the couple of things that show up as being really challenging are patients waiting in ambulances, clearly not okay and needs to be resolved. The speed of people travelling through the emergency department, and then also the number of people that you have in non-standard bed spaces, again, clearly not a position we want to be in. So what are we doing about that? So we've done really huge amounts of work to make improvements, and again, Geraldine and Paul and June Bernard will absolutely expand on these. The bit that's challenging is that those improvements haven't yet had an impact on those headline figures of people queuing in ambulances or the flow through the system. So again, we've got more work planned. We've got more work starting next week, particularly with Scottish Ambulance around cohorting. That starts early next week to try the next thing to see if that can have an impact on queuing ambulances. And I think in a really positive way, Geraldine and others had a conversation with Scottish Government about our submitted plan very recently, and we've had some very positive feedback. However, that we're not going to get the confirmation of that until the diagnostics happen. So again, quite sensibly, the departments are tying up the diagnostic with those next steps that we'll take. But particularly around frailty at the front door, hospital at home, those things, we had some very positive feedback, and we will be able to enact those as part of that recovery plan. So definitely got plans in place. our experience is it's very hard to have an impact on the ambulance queuing. So again, we need to continue to approach that as actively as we can, to really try and change that dynamic, which just isn't good. In terms of prevention, I think we've got a number of things that I'd point to. The community appointment days, which again the board's very, very familiar with, and they've been having a real impact, and I think relate really nicely to Sandy's point just a moment ago about how you engage that lived experience to actually get a really different dynamic in how you design, organise, and deliver service provision. And again, a really, really positive thing is the work with Marmot, Sir Michael Marmot, who's working with the city through the partnership and the council and the population of the city. And I think the Marmot work will have, really huge impact in that, and absolutely teach us something that we can then learn and expand in Aberdeenshire and Moray, and indeed across lots of bits of Scotland as we go forward. So I think that's really positive. And then my third bit in prevention that again I think is really positive is the anchor work. We had our formal meeting with government department, the government department that deals with this yesterday, about our submission, and they gave very, very positive feedback about the things we're doing. So again, some really good stuff that's having that impact us as a really big employer, really big local organisation, and the anchor effect we have around reducing inequality, particularly in society. And then the money bit is the fourth thing that's absolutely key to the overall performance. We're going to speak about in detail, Alison, so I won't say any more than that, but clearly another challenging area with work that we're all doing collectively in the diagnostic to support us to move that forward. So if I was, sorry, Alison, I'm talking far too long, I do apologise. So if I was kind of just saying that those would be the four key big areas that I would take out from this report, and clearly there's a ton of detail underneath, but I think those are four pretty good headings. Thanks.
Thanks for that narrative around the report. Thank you very much. I'll turn now to Alex to introduce the detail of the report maybe, and some of the colleagues who are around the table with us today as well. Alex, thank you.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in relation to the introduction, but just to say when I did introduce this report at the PAFIC committee, I was mindful of the length of the report and the amount of detail in it, and perhaps some of the key messages being lost within that detail. So we did agree at that point in time that we were going to have a conversation about what the performance reporting looks like for 2025-26, and the chief executive team have started to put some time in the diary to have those conversations. We'll ensure that the board are kept in the loop in relation to that, and can input into what comes from that. So I just wanted to give you some assurance around about that in relation to what we're doing in that space. I think we've given you a lot of detail because we want to make sure that you can understand what's happening within the system, and if you've got that detail to hand. I do take the point that maybe some of the key messages are missed in relation to that, although I do think we've probably got a good framework and a starting point for revising and taking that forward. Chair, I normally don't say very much in relation to this report. The executive team are all here and able and willing to answer any of the questions you may have in relation to the detail.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. That's really helpful. I think it's really important that we have the detail at our fingertips, but having a way into looking at it, I think is really important going forward as well. So thank you for that, and thanks particularly to Preston as well, Preston Gann, for all the work that he's done on getting us to this stage of being able to have this data accessible. I think that's really important for all of us to understand our system better and be able to pinpoint those key areas like Adam's just done there as well, that are areas for our added scrutiny as we move forward. So thank you. Sandy, you were going to come back. Sandy, please.
Thanks, Alison. Just make a couple of general comments, and it kind of echoes really what Alex was saying as well, and then just a couple of questions, because there's a number of things that stand out in the report that I think people joining this meeting today would be a bit surprised if they weren't referred to. So firstly, yes, it was considered recently at PAFIC, and there were many questions and challenges around a great deal of the content. And I'm very grateful for the level of detail and analysis provided, which does ensure that we remain fully sighted on our performance and what has been done to address the concerns around what's been delivered or not. I do want to emphasise that important point made by Preston in the covering report of our intention to evolve our performance reporting during 25-26 to make that shift from activity-based reporting to a far more outcome-focused model, and us striving to develop that very clear line of sight from our agreed objectives as a board to the outcomes that we aim to deliver for the public that we serve. And so far less on systems and processes, which is still far too much, but there were gaps previously. Now we have a lot of information for the committee to scrutinise, but we do need to refine that, and I'm looking forward to working with Alex and Preston and others to do that in due course. Just a couple of things, Alison, I'd like to ask. The first of 2 points, I just want to join the dots between this item and item 11 in relation to cancer, because the point I'm making is really in relation to performance. So just to raise that here, although perhaps Paul would prefer to discuss it later on. But in terms of pinch points identified in relation to cancer treatment pathways, I notice in this particular report what is considered to be a solution in terms of services and capacity, but it says in the report that we're awaiting a response from the Scottish Government. But on page 57, there is reference to most of the cancer bids submitted being approved for 25-26 and are in the process of being operationalised. And in when we come to item 11, there's more detail on that. So 55% of the awarded bids are cancer pathway focused, and additional funding has been awarded in other key diagnostic pathways. I suppose the first of 2 questions, Alison, sorry, that's a bit long-winded.
That's fine.
The first is, so we are aware of the resource and capacity issues that needed to be addressed in our funding bids. We're 3 months into this year of 25-26. A lot of the funding is non-recurring, and we have regularly heard as a board that because of capacity issues across our system, it is really hard to implement change quickly. So I just want to check out that sentence that those parts of service development are being operationalised now. Can I just have assurance that that is the case and we can expect to see waiting lists drop? That's my first question.
Yeah, I think you're raising really key points there on the performance that we really do need to have an eagle eye looking at and commenting on and having assurance around. Paul, are you with us still?
Yeah.
Paul, can I turn to you to?
Yeah, the short answer to Sandy's question is yes, they're in hand. They're all at different stages, because the funding came in at different stages, and because of the context, we were quite clear that we weren't going to commit until we were very, very certain of the funding. Some of the funding has only just come in the last week for chemo, for SACT therapy, and acute oncology. But yes, in principle, we are doing things and implementing things at different stages, and the government are aware of it, and they are adjusting their trajectories and their performance reporting process accordingly.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Paul. It is a bit about just getting going quickly, because I suppose the narrative in this report has been reported to PAFIC frequently, and I suppose it's just anxious to see progress, as I'm sure you and your colleagues are as well. So that's welcome news. I suppose just one further issue just to pick up, and I forgot to raise it at PAFIC. So turning to tier 3 communities and our KPI and hospital teams having workforce plans to support safe and effective staffing. I think you're the lead there, Judith. We have a target of 100%, but Q4 is showing 10%. There is mention under mitigation and recovery that ongoing support from the corporate workforce planning team is scheduled for further input in March. 3 months on, just wondering, has that figure improved?
Thank you, Judith.
I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that for you today, Sandy, but I can get a written response to the board in terms of how much further that has gone. I think the report does acknowledge, obviously, we have had some quite significant capacity issues at Dr. Gray's to do this, but what I'll do is I'll get a firm response to that so that I'm accurate in my reporting and share that with the board after the meeting.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Alison.
Judith. Yeah, Judith, and can I ask Alison Wood to record that as an action, the action plan as well? That will be followed up and distributed to the whole board. Thanks very much for the question, Sandy, and we look forward to the briefing, Judith, as well. Thank you. Okay, Sandy, you happy? Yeah, thank you. Okay, move to Dennis now, please. Dennis.
Thank you, Alison. Can I say that I welcomed Adam's introduction to this paper? And it's on that it's a comment really to some extent in that anyone reading this paper out with this board meeting may find it, it's very detailed. There's a lot of information. But I think, putting into context, I'm just wondering, do we need to have a front sheet to introduce this paper for people from the public who are maybe coming to this cold to some extent and not at the board meeting today if they were reading this paper, because it doesn't then give explicit actions in terms of how we plan to take things forward. So it's a lot of detail there, and Alex was saying there was an understanding around this, and I get that, but I'm just wondering, do we need to have some sort of front sheet to explain the paper, and then to say that, given all the information, the data that's there, etc., we also have plans in place to look at how our performance is moving forward. Now, this is for a committee. I absolutely accept that this paper for people on PAFIC is probably the right paper, and they probably come to it in a different way because they're informed and they're looking at the scrutiny and looking for assurances. But I think in terms of our public-facing element of a paper like this, I'm just wondering, do we need to have a front sheet with a bit more detail to explain not the data in its entirety, but maybe to say that we have this information, it's there, it's detailed, but we also have plans at hand. And, it really is just that element of it. So just to see if there's a comment there. Thank you.
No, thanks, Dennis. And obviously, as you know, we're on a process of continual improvement with this as well. An awful lot of work has been done to improve, and that continues to go on as well. And obviously your comments there would fit into that work that's going on. I mean, I think there's maybe something around how we make use of the executive summary bit at the front from the chief executive as well. Maybe there's wider use can be made of that section and its purpose at the front of the report. But Alex, do you want to comment on this as well?
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to say the same as you. I think we certainly, I think that is a good comment from Dennis, and your suggestion about doing something in either the exec summary or in the cover report is also welcome. So we can pick that up in terms of the review that we're going to undertake of this. There is obviously a balance about giving the board the operational information that they need, but also being able to kind of show to the public how performance is within the organisation and the improvements and the work that we're looking to do in that space. So we'll certainly pick that up, and it was going to be a feature of the work that we were going to do in that space. So welcome those comments.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alex. We need to do the scrutiny and have the information but to do the scrutiny properly, but we also need that transparency and understanding around it as well. So it's ensuring that we tick both those things. I think it's important going forward. Dennis, are you content with that? Yeah, thank you. Kathleen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really just wanted to pull out a bit more from the covering report about the deteriorating workforce engagement. I mean, obviously, a lot of the focus of today's meeting has been around the escalation to level 4 and finances and etc. But an awful lot of those deliverables that are reported our own workforce along the capacity, the recruitment, training, absence, well-being, retention, etc. And it's really just, making sure that we've got that assurance that there's significant progress and support to staff, and also to make sure that, that we are moving forward on these elements of the deliverables without that negative drop effect of the escalation that could impact on the recruitment and people wanting to come and work for Grampian. So it's really just some assurance on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Thank you for making those points as well. I think it's clear. I think there were 7 deliverables related to staff wellbeing that hadn't been met, and obviously we've had an awful lot of emphasis in the past years on staff wellbeing. So I'll be joining the dots in what we're actually doing and what we're achieving with that as well in terms of the deliverables. I think that's a really key question here. Philip, do you want to respond?
No, thanks very much. And I think, yeah, acknowledging that, so through the Staff Governance Committee, it was highlighted to the extent that Staff Governance Committee request we have an extraordinary Staff Governance Committee to look specifically at what we're doing to help support cultural development within the organisation. And obviously that impacts upon the well-being of staff as well. What we highlighted was that the landscape that we've got is too complex when it comes to developing this, and we actually need to simplify that, and we're kind of probably going to badge that as the focus on the fundamentals. And by focusing on those fundamentals such as appraisals, sickness absence, some of the statutory mandatory training, that in itself helps to develop our culture, and in so doing help support our staff. So it's a really, really valid point. It's been picked up by the Staff Governance Committee, and it will be reported back to full board through that as we progress with the actions that came out of that.
Brilliant, thank you, Philip. Kathleen, is that reassuring to hear?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, it's quite stark in the report about how many deliverables against workforce there were, and I thought it was important to raise.
Yeah, thank you indeed, Kathleen. Great. Susan, you just put your hand up. Is that in relation to this as well?
It is, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It was just to say we were aware that there was higher level of sickness absence within our domestic workforce, and we've held a couple of sessions within the service, and a huge thank you to the staff who came forward, who have given freely of their views around what we as NHS Grampian can do to be a better employer. The feedback will be taken through the various structures, so I won't say too much just now, but just to say work is on progress to complement the work that's set out.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that. And Alex, are you coming in on this as well?
Yeah, it was just to say that, a lot of the information in this is driven by the ADP and the deliverables that were included within there. And, the most recent version of the ADP that we considered, we had reduced the number of deliverables and prioritised those. So that was in respect of some of the workforce challenges that and capacity issues that we were having in that space.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, Kathleen. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Colette, please.
Thank you. With your permission, I've got a couple of questions which come at things quite differently. So I'll maybe just put them all out there, and then someone can pick them up. First of all, the complexity of the report, we've talked about it. It is very complex, and I agree with Dennis that we need something which is simpler and more public facing. That said, I think in my very long career, this is one of the best approaches to performance reporting that I've seen, albeit that we're not getting the results that we need to. So I think I welcome the commitment to refine it. And one of my specific questions relates to the covering report, where there's an approach now which is moving much more towards KPIs, focusing on outcomes, not activity, and with those broken down to milestones. So 2 questions on that. One, what is the time frame for delivery of this? Because I really welcome that approach. And to what extent have staff been involved in that process? To what extent will they be involved as we go forward? So that's the first part. The second part is the manner of the reporting itself. And I just want to use one example of this, but it does apply across other areas. So on communities, there's a KPI on abortion, for example, where the target is 100% of individuals are offered a date for an abortion within 1 week of assessment. We're at 77% of that target. What the report doesn't tell us is what happens to the remaining 23%. So where there's a 1 week target, Are we talking about 8 days, 10 days, 3 months? That's the bit that's missing for me. And we don't really need to get into the detail today, but I think it would be useful to understand by how much we're missing these targets. And a final point, which I think I've made before, is that as we revisit this, I think some element of benchmarking against the national standards would be very, very helpful in the covering paper. So I appreciate they were all over the place, but I hope that someone can address those.
Yeah, thank you, Colette. Really important points to make. Alex, I think, can talk about the paper itself and what's included and how. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, so I'll pass over to Preston to deal with the first question, who's been working on that process with the services. But I think in relation to your final point, Colette, I think the point you make around about benchmarking would be helpful. And certainly as we go through that review, we can think about that. We do have information at the chief executive team level where we do regularly look at the benchmarking information, so we can certainly think about that in this context as well. I'll pass over to Preston, who can deal with the first question, and I'm not sure if there's if there's somebody from the exec team that can pick up on the second question, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Preston. Good.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Chair. Hi, Colette and board members. So in terms of that, we are currently already progressing with that piece of work. It's in line with our performance management framework in terms of continuous measurement cycle. So in terms of the working with teams, if you've seen the report at the moment, we have already started to do those alignments in terms of the logic chain process, where you can see some of the outcomes aligning to the KPIs and deliverables. And albeit we're not in a mature stage at this point in time, and we're definitely making headway into progressing that. So as far as 25-26 is concerned, the development with of the KPIs and the deliverables, we've already started working with teams and their leads in terms of understanding what is truly key and valuable to ensure that what we are saying by 31st of March will be deliverable and be realistic. So that progress is underway at this point in time. So hopefully in the Q1 of the whole report for 25-26, you should see a bit of a change in terms of that improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. And Preston, can you just clarify, when you talked about engagement with staff, when you talk about engagement with teams, do you mean the leads of teams? Do you mean staff working in a particular area, or do you mean through the planning team? What did you mean by that? Sorry.
Yes, the operational team leads working in those areas that we are actually working with them to developing the KPIs and deliverables. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Geraldine, you put your hand up, I think, for a bit of Colette's question as well. Thank you, Geraldine.
Yes, thank you. Just to pick up on the specific example of the abortion care. So I think this is actually quite an interesting point, because that KPI is set on the basis of the national standards, which is 100%. And certainly the clinical team are really keen that we don't change that we keep it at 100% consistently, which obviously gives that a real challenge in terms of how achievable that is, how deliverable that is to make that particular target. But I think that it raises the question about, if we know that actually we are going to be off of it probably for some time, then actually how do we explain and give the data to show how we're closing that gap and the outcomes for those people that have perhaps missed the target? So I'll take that back to the team in terms of, actually, is there some data there that we can start to collect? And that's maybe then how we describe some of the outcomes for those people who perhaps have not met the specific target, but again, we'll give just a bit more narrative round about it. And I'm sure that there'll be other KPI examples where we've got similar situations as well. So we can just have a look to see if we've got that data, which again might be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Geraldine. I think Susan's coming on this as well, and then I'll come back to Colette. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. And I guess there's a bit of a cycle, isn't there, in terms of our delivery of contraception services, particularly long-acting reversible contraception, and perhaps the increase in unplanned pregnancies. There was a discussion at the board chief execs nationally, because the Women's Plan has looked into this, so we do have data across Scotland, and indeed the board chief execs have asked directors of public health medical directors and nurse directors to get together to look at where others have perhaps got improvements in the pathway that we can all learn from, but also how do we get the right balance between the preventative services and clearly the response. Again, just to say, there was a deep dive around our sexual health services at the Population Health Committee, so very happy to share that report, Colette. I think that's complementary to Geraldine's offer rather than instead of.
Thank you. Colette, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, that was all really helpful. Thanks to everyone who waded in on those. I picked out the abortion one purely as an example because, as Geraldine has just said, there are others in this vast report which fall into the same category. And I suppose what I'm really saying is that we sometimes find ourselves focusing so much on the bottom line financially and the bottom line from targets, etc., that we forget that these are people that we're dealing with. And what I think is really important to me is to understand what's happening to the people who aren't being picked up within these targets. And that applies equally to cancer, which we'll come to later on the agenda. So thank you all for your input.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just noticed that Daniela Browl has just joined the call. Daniela, we're ahead of the agenda here, so you weren't late in joining. We've been ahead of ourselves here, so I think Geraldine's been able to pick up the specific questions. But thank you for joining, and we're ahead. So apologise for that. Okay, and I think maybe there's an action in what Colette said there as well that we need to report on, we think about as well, you know, what happens to those when we don't meet the targets. I think that if we can record that as an action as well, so we've got it sitting in an action plan as something we've identified here in this paper as well, Alison, it'd be helpful if you could do that. Okay, but I think we'll move on from that point now. So Richie, please.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. And just, I'm also a member of PAFIC, and just found the discussion this morning on the paper really kind of helpful, which is much appreciated as well from my perspective. A question on deliverables and a comment on KPIs. And Kathleen partly asked my question around the deliverables, and there's still 55 to be done this year that were rolled forward. And my question around it is, I guess, that confidence that, are we still confident that those will be delivered, given that the operating context hasn't really changed from last year? So I guess just a comment on just overall in broad terms, are we confident that more headway will be made this year? And I guess related to that is the report sets out that appropriate system arrangements and assurance routes are in place to manage the completion of those, and just a little bit more information about what those might be as an example would be helpful for me, just to understand, I guess, what that means. And I'll maybe wait for my comment on KPI, Alison, if that's all right.
Okay, Alex, Preston, who would like to take this on?
Preston, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, Richie, thank you. So as you've seen in the PAFIC performance report, the 55 deliverables that will remain outstanding for the end of year, Q4 and 24-25 ADP has basically been reached out to all operational team leads and their exec leads as well, responsible for those areas. And there is assurance in the report to confirm where the assurance will go and how and when often they will be monitored and performance managed through their own governance arrangements. That has all been detailed in the PAFIC performance report, which has been reviewed back in 28th of May this year, so at the PAFIC meeting. With that in mind, I think we can then obviously transfer to the assurance for this board that Sandy initially introduced, that we have been assured of that arrangement routes. I think exec members here can perhaps confirm that that will be the case for ongoing monitoring of these deliverables for this year.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the point is that some of the deliverables are obviously being taken forward, and we've got the assurance there that how it's been taken forward. There's also examples of where things are not being progressed. I suppose it's the decision making around that as well, because obviously if something was a key priority, therefore it was a deliverable, but now it's not. How is that decision made? Maybe I could add to the question from that point of view.
We can see that, yes, we can see that from the tier 1 table there, that of those 55 incomplete, and we have asked operational team leads and their execs in terms of how are these decisions been made. As you can see, some of the work there, you know, some of those actually are carried forward into the ADP for 25-26. in terms of those deliverables. Of those ones, they're also continuing into their own directorate work as part of that behind the scenes. So decisions has been made around those discussions with them as we go through the report.
Okay, thank you. Alex, you come in as well on that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we were mindful when we went through this process that we had, you know, some of those deliverables were really important to continue with, and that's why we put them into the ADP or kept them within the ADP. But even the ones that are, you know, within that kind of portfolio and structure or service structure are also important in that space as well. So I think what we didn't want to be saying was, okay, let's just start afresh next year in that, and we want to make sure there was some visibility of that to the board. And what we will do is we can pick that up with regard to the, you know, the review that we're undertaking and how we're going to do performance management going forward, because we do have, as you know, the operational improvement plan, and we've been asked to do a little bit more deeper dive monitoring into some of the aspects in relation to that. So we're thinking about it within that context. But I am really mindful that if we give a load of information, then sometimes we lose, you know, some of the messaging around about it. So again, it's that balance. But I think what we are trying to do here is to kind of show transparency and how we're dealing with that. And again, we'll pick that up in terms of the review.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. Richie, come back to you. Is there any further comment you need?
Yeah, thanks. And I guess from my reason asking was just, I guess, to draw it out in this particular forum rather than at PAFIC. So just again, just that broader awareness on the thanks for that. But brief comment on the KPIs and just, I guess, examples is around the compliance with statutory training and also the staff appraisals. It does the report sets out some of the challenge, some of the kind of performance challenges in over the last year in those regards. And again, like helpfully, the report signposts to the spotlights later in the paper, and that gives more detail in terms of what's been planned to be taken forward to address the performance on those ones and indeed others. And it does say that, that there is some detailed work that will be underway to hopefully improve the position. And yes, I guess just look forward to seeing at PAFIC or indeed here progress against those particular areas where those actions start to kick in. So just to recognise that the work's in hand in that matter. So thanks.
Brilliant, thanks, Richie. Thank you. And Derek, please.
Thanks, Alison. Just a few points. I also sit in PAFIC, so I had a chance to go through this particular report in detail at PAFIC. But one or two things coming out of it. The change from activity to outcome, I think, is very welcome. The need to show how the ADP is mitigating the strategic risks, I think, is also important, and I think we could improve that and make it clear how that is working. On the deliverables, less than half were achieved. And what I find it difficult to come to a conclusion about was that just below par performance, or was it in fact over ambitious in terms of putting things into the ADP? And I think it's difficult to tell, but when you look at the factors contributing towards the incomplete deliverables, we tend to suggest that we were maybe a bit over ambitious. Now, if we were over ambitious as opposed to below par performance, that has an impact. And the last point is really what we've just been talking about with Richie there. Some of the deliverables move to the new delivery plan, which is fine in that the board will be able to see what's happening with them. But some of them are going back to the departments to be looked at in the department. And the question is, how is the board going to know whether these deliverables have been achieved or not, if they're being handled in the departments as opposed to coming back to PAFIC via the delivery plan? Thank you.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Derek. Thank you. Alex, do you want to tackle this?
Yeah, so I just say, I mean, Derek, you made the point in PAFIC around about the risks and linking the strategic risks to it, and I think that was a really good point, and certainly something that we need to kind of pick up as a team in that space. So thanks for that comment. I think my observation and having looked at it is that we probably were over ambitious in relation to what we were trying to achieve and the timescales we were trying to achieve it within. We've set targets that, you know, kind of largely flow through the financial year on a quarterly basis, when we know that at certain points of the year we're going to be busier than other points in that space. So I do think, and one of the bits that, you know, we've talked about before is when we create our ADP, you know, we're a complex organisation with many strands, and, you know, everybody wanted to see something of theirs within the ADP because that demonstrated how they were delivering the plan for the future. So, you know, the executive team have taken that on board, and as a result of that, reduced the number of deliverables, and that was part of the actions that come from that. I do take the point in relation to the ones that are kind of sitting there at the moment in the operational space, and I think once we get the new how we're going to do this going forward, we will pick that up and we can report that through to the board and in a seminar around about where we're planning to take that. And if the board feel that they want to bring some of those back in again, then we'll quite happily take those back in again at that point in time. But that was where we've got to at the moment. But we're mindful of the board's role in supporting performance within the organisation.
Thank you, Alex. Derek, do you want to come back? Are you happy?
Yeah, well, if you're happy, Chair, that it comes back to a seminar as opposed to a board, then
well,
I'm okay.
I think the process Alex hinted at was come back to a seminar first of all to discuss, and then go to board committee after that. I think that is what we need to do. I think having a discussion at a seminar would be useful to try and work together on a way forward. But I do think ultimately board or committee would be the appropriate place. But yeah, as a seminar is stage one, I think I would support and encourage Alex to do. But does that make sense to you as well, Derek? Yeah, okay, so seminar first, and then we'll take it from there moving forward to board governance. Thank you. Okay, Colette, please.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. Please, with permission, I'd like one more question. I'm not a member of PAFIC, so I don't know what sits underneath these. I was very interested in the operational improvement plan part of this report, and there is a statement in there about the NHS Grampian allocation to procedures in other parts of NHS Scotland, and it highlights the number of potential operations that might be carried out. So my question is, how do these compare to the demand here, and do we know what impact they will have on waiting times?
Thank you. That's a very good question too. Paul, are you? Yes, put your hand up, Paul. I can't see you, but you put your hand up. So, Paul.
Yeah. So the impact is very much significant to our recovery, and this is something that's been developing over a period of time. With the Golden Jubilee, with the NHS National Treatment Centres in Highland, with NHS 5, where we've had breast patients previously. A lot of it was accelerated as a result of the immediate recovery coming out of COVID. It has increasingly become part of how we are delivering services in the current situation, and will be very much part of our phase 2 that Adam referred to in his chief executive report of the national framework approach for recovering our long waiters. So very much part and parcel of it. I think one of the things that's also developing is that greater understanding between teams at different parts of the country, increasingly linked in through this work, and increasingly finding opportunities to develop pathways where we've been stuck for options within our own health board, and likewise increasingly we are offering services to other health boards within both the north of Scotland and further, but predominantly in the North Scotland, particularly around some of our cancer services, where there is no service in a neighbouring service. So lots there to develop and grow, and to consider how it becomes part of a a much more integrated joint sort of system of provision. And I think in the cancer paper later on, we'll touch very briefly on a very specific project that involves screening and the screening program. And that, I think, is a really exciting opportunity for much greater collaboration, be it short term to help our recovery, or be it long term, yet to be considered, and all the impacts to be done. In terms of patients, there is increasing evidence that patients are very willing to travel for services. But I think the key impact is to ensure that the support around the travel and the identification of those best suited for and not for travel is in place. And again, I think we're slowly maturing and understanding the wider sort of drivers around good quality care. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Colette, is that okay as an answer here?
Absolutely, and that last point was one I was going to pick up on. I think it's absolutely key that we understand who can and cannot take advantage of these. I've been very fortunate to make use of an out of area process, but it occurred to me that had I not been able to travel and I was on my own, how would I have made it there? So I think it's really important that we consider the health inequality aspects of this. But that was a really excellent response. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important point as well. We don't want to increase inequalities by a different way of working. So it's really important that that's at the forefront of our thinking as well. And we actually understand putting the patient at the centre and the experience for the patient across the piece as well. That's really important as we go forward. Thank you. There are a lot of conversations there, a lot of discussion about the How We Doing report, starting about how the paper is actually presented, what it tells us, what it doesn't tell us, how we can increase that transparency and clarity around the paper, and also be more useful to us as board members in our scrutiny and analysis. We started off with the challenges that Adam, as interim chief executive, recognised as well, and thinking about the plans to move forward from those. I mean, one key one he mentioned obviously was the unscheduled care, and knowing the plans there is absolutely crucial part of our work to be able to focus on those ambulance waits and try and support what's happening at the doors to the hospital as well. So we've raised these issues here, and we've had a good discussion of them from the report we have, and thinking about how we move the paper forward as well. I can't see anyone else indicating at this point, so I'm going to have to turn then to the recommendations on this paper, and in these we are endorsing the Q4 end of year How Are We Doing performance report and confirming closure of the 24-25 ADP. We've noted, I think, that the 55 outstanding deliverables will have appropriate system arrangements and assurance routes in place to manage these post 31st of March 2025. And we've also confirm that the How Are We Doing report and the performance management framework provide the board with comprehensive insightful performance information throughout the year, enabling us to effectively assess the organisation's performance. We're asked to agree that the 25-26 reporting will focus on clearer articulation of in-year outcomes and the improvements they are intended to deliver, supported by smart deliverables with measurable milestones, outcome-focused KPIs to strengthen delivery, tracking and assurance. We've had discussion around that point. And confirm if any escalation is required to another board committee or the board, and specify the details of that escalation is as well. They're the recommendations in front of us with that decision in the middle of it as well. Can we agree those recommendations, please? And we've made that decision to confirm that as well. Thank you. Okay, thanks ever so much for the contributions of everyone, from Alex, Preston and everyone else in the team as well, for contributing to that very full discussion of those key points. We are due to move into a comfort break here. We are a bit early, so we are due to come back at 11:55. And I think I'll stick at that time to give everyone a decent break at the moment as well. So we return to carry on at 11:55, please. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will make a start now then. Thank you very much for coming back after the break. We're moving on to item 9, which is the project update on the Baird Family Hospital and the Anchor Centre. I'll go straight to Nick Fluck, SRO, to introduce this paper, I think. Nick?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So you would have seen the paper. As before, we've tried to set out in the paper the separate progress updates for both the family hospital and the anchor centre, which I think adds to some clarity. I've got Colin Adam with me, who just is going to highlight a couple of the key points for us, and then very happy to take any questions. Colin, can I pass over to yourself?
Thanks very much, Nick, and good morning to all board members. Similar to last paper that I presented in April, the paper has set out an update specifically for the Anchor Centre and specifically for the Baird. So I'll just run through them in relation to each building. So just as a preamble to the paper, I've set out first of all, the key issues that have previously been presented to the board, and I won't go through those specifically, but just in terms of progress on the Anchor, as we had mentioned in the April paper, there had been a decision made by the Chief Executive in terms of the completion strategy for the building, and the instructed works that we were preparing have now all been administered to the contractor, and the contractor is now underway with the development of the REBA Stage 4E design, and we're expecting to see the fruits of that in July. Once we've received that information, the information will go through a series of reviews by our technical advisor teams and the safety groups, upon which there will be ratification from the project board to instruct that work to proceed. As had been presented in April, the intention is that we'll look to get that work carried out on site starting in August and carrying through to approximately October, upon which the commissioning phase will progress through to late November, early December, and upon acceptance of the building, we'd look to start the functional commissioning process early 2026, with service moves intended ahead of spring in 2026. The paper sets out some of the assurance measures that we've implemented in the project. First of all, I'd like to update the board on the holistic design review. Just to explain what that is, that's effectively the advisory team analysing the evolution of the building design from its inception through to construction in terms of the contractor design proposals. And that's come about through the NHS Assure KSAR process, in which there's recommendations that have come through the Scottish Hospitals Inquiry, where they've asked us to specifically look at the environmental matrix and the room data sheets for the building. As I've stated in the paper, there are no significant issues that we're not already aware of, and that process has been very beneficial in helping us close out some of the derogations, in terms of design derogations and construction derogations that were outstanding, and legacy issues that we'd picked up over the course of the last 12 months. In terms of the key stage assurance review, we continue to have regular meetings with NHS Scotland Assure. We're meeting with them weekly at the moment in terms of presenting to them the information that we're submitting to discharge the construction KSAR. And indeed, we met with them again this morning to finalise the ventilation submission in relation to the Anchor open plan treatment space. And that should move us into position by the end of June that we'll have submitted all of the information to be able to discharge the construction KSAR. That will enable us to move then into the commissioning KSAR in August of this year. And as I said, the intention is that will align and coincide with the completion of the building towards a handover KSAR at the end of the year in advance of the functional commissioning phase. In terms of other instructions, in addition to that we've instructed the contractor to evolve the design on the open plan treatment space, you'll be aware, as mentioned at the last paper update, there was an instruction for the removal or replacement of a Scottish water supply pipe. So following further investigation, we've identified that reserve supply pipe is no longer required for the building, so the instruction has moved to simply a removal of that pipe from the building to avoid any risk of contamination in the water as it enters the building once the water is commissioned within the building. And as I'd mentioned in the last paper, there was further evaluation of some of the issues during the construction in terms of moisture ingress, and a subgroup had been set up within the project board to look at that specific issue. We agreed yesterday at project board that we would carry out some advanced environmental testing of the Anchor open plan treatment space as a precautionary measure. Much of this testing is done during the commissioning phase, but we felt it would be beneficial to carry out some advanced testing in case there was any findings that we would have to remediate in advance of the completion of the building. So that brings a secondary precautionary measure here to ensuring that there is if there is any findings, that we can address those prior to practical completion. Moving on to the Baird. The Baird has had significant progress over the last 2 months. As I mentioned at the last meeting, similar to the Anchor, we were developing a completion strategy. All of the advisory team, along with the multi-stakeholder team, multidisciplinary team within the board, have been extensively involved in the review of the Baird theatres and the Baird neonatal unit in Skiboo. The effects of that is that we brought the advisory team in to answer some of the questions where there was uncertainty around the design, and we've now developed instructions for both the remedial works that are necessary for the theatres to address some of the ventilation issues, and remedial works to the neonatal in Skiboo, which have been somewhat reduced from what we initially envisaged due to the concerns over the ventilation systems. But in essence, you'll see there in the theatres, the scope of work amounts to now altering the ventilation requirements within the layout preparation area of the theatres, and subdividing the MDT rooms to avoid cross-contamination between theatres, along with some ancillary measures to disposal holes, etc. In addition to that work, there is also further instructions being developed for the MRI space and in some other ancillary areas within the building, such as the cafe, and we're intending for those works to be instructed simultaneous to the alterations to the theatres and the neonatal unit. One important point within the paper is a decision again from the Chief Executive about the removal of the sinks within the Baird Family Hospital. There was a request made to the Chief Executive to base or to make a decision on the removal or retention of sinks generally within the building. Infection prevention control advice was for removal of sinks due to the potential of healthcare acquired infection from the water systems. A decision was taken by the Chief Executive that the board would seek to manage that risk by regular flushing and management of the sinks throughout the duration of occupancy of the building, and that in the future, if there is a decision to be taken around that, it should not impact on the closing out and completion of the building under this contract. We continue with these instructions to work with the contractor to develop a detailed programme to completion. We had hoped that we'd be able to present some dates around completion, but there is some complexities in the nature of the design work that is presented in relation to the theatres, an ongoing discussion with NHS Scotland Assure, so it's preventing us at this stage being able to crystallise dates in terms of completion, but we can assure that the work is well in progress to get us into a position of focus towards completion. We, as I said, with the Anchor, continue to engage extensively with NHS Scotland Assure and are putting into place programme dates specifically for the submission of the detailed review findings on the Baird. We're likely to start that process in around September, October this year, and look to hopefully achieve completion of that by the end of the year. What I would say, just in general, the list of instructions here that we are looking to implement are going to extend the programme beyond the current completion date of November 2025. It's inevitable that those works will incur additional prolongation to the project. So just for board members to be aware that the November 2025 date that's being published is the contract completion date based on the current scope of works, but any additional works will extend beyond that date. But in terms of instructions that have previously been mentioned within board updates, the copper fibre oxygen resilience routes that were instructed in April are well underway now and are due for completion in November of this year. The paper identifies the key risks to the project. I don't think any of these will be unfamiliar to board members who have previously heard from myself. We continue to have design compliance issues, but as I've mentioned, the holistic design review has been very helpful in assessing and understanding any of these design compliance matters, and we can address those prior to practical completion. We continue to have regular engagement in terms of the key stage assurance review risks with NHS Scotland Assure. There is the key risk of further delay, as I've just mentioned there, in terms of additional instruction. There will be delay, but we continue to monitor the programme very regularly and assess all instructions to make sure that they're absolutely necessary and they're appropriate for completion and delivery of the building. There's a risk around project resources, but the project has benefited recently through the additional technical advisor support, and that's been very successful in giving the external bodies such as NHS Scotland Assure the confidence that we have the right mechanisms to advise the board appropriately on technical issues. We have identified key risks around governance, and as I've said previously, PAFIC continued to be updated in terms of progress on this project. And as I've mentioned already, we've been taking on board some of the Scottish Hospital inquiry recommendations and within the project board, and carrying out reviews of how we can learn from that. There continues to be key risks around design decisions, and as I've mentioned earlier, the Chief Executive's decision will be presented to the Audit and Risk Committee as an ongoing residual risk that the board will manage. Costs, there are significant risks around costs, particularly around the contractor and supply chain. We continue to engage extensively with the contractor and administer the contract appropriately. And we continue to engage additionally with the Scottish Government and make sure that they're fully abreast of any changes that are looking to be implemented, so that they have awareness and can improve the position with the project. And lastly, as had been brought to my attention in the board paper, the Health Inequalities Impact Assessment was quite well out of date, and I'm pleased to say that we've started a process of updating that based on the new template. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that you may have for myself and Nick, and sorry that's a very fast presentation of what I hope is contained within the paper.
Thank you very much, Colin. That was a very comprehensive update to us all, so thank you very much. Appreciate all the detail that you had in front of us there. Thank you. Can I ask for any questions or comments for the paper, please? Dennis, please, first.
Thank you very much. As the chair said, very comprehensive, and thank you for your presentation. And again, I think it's well articulated. Probably just a very minor point, Colin, but you mentioned in terms of the Baird with regard to infection control in the sinks and the decision of the executive team just to keep the sinks in place. And this will be obviously managed in terms of mitigation by flushing. It's just that key assurance, and I suppose it's once the building is fully operational, it's just to say that is there any guidance as to how often this should be done? And we just need assurance that this will be, and I haven't noticed Alan's just coming in here, that obviously it will be monitored and measured on a regular basis, just to provide that insurance, so that infection control are actually satisfied with the mitigations that have been put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And I'll turn to Alan, I think, is volunteering to answer. Thank you.
Just to give the board the confidence here, there's guidance here on what you should be doing in various areas of the hospital, Dennis, in regard to flushing underused outlets. There should also be flushing for other things like Legionella and Pseudomonas. So what we've done is we've worked actively with Scottish Government. They've given us the resource that we've asked for to be able to take that away. So normally it's left down to the nursing staff to do the flushing in their areas, because they would know what sinks are getting used often than that. However, we know that has caused issues previously, and obviously the nursing staff and that are dealing with other things. So between myself and June, and that we agreed that we would take on that responsibility if I was given the appropriate resource to be able to carry out properly, which we have now been given. So that allowed us to make that call and support the decision to keep the sinks in, because the sinks are normally in it anywhere else anyway, and give the confidence to the IPC team that it'll be managed through a diligent process. It was not there previously, so that's how we will take that on, Dennis.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments about this paper, please? John, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, not being on the committees, I've got a specific question which may or may not be relevant, but it does feel like, I know Derek clarified for us earlier that there's a lot of verifiable costs, but there may need to be, scrutiny of that, and it just feels like, and I do feel for the project team in this, and Nick as executive lead. There's one thing after another with the project, and I suppose from that point of view, it's just trying to get through it, as long as the costs are verifiable. But it does feel, I can remember Alex saying some months ago, it is a bit of a dance with the contractor through this whole process. So it's really just a comment that if I'm feeling frustrated in that, I'm sure that Nick and the project team are in and around that daily. So my specific question is on page 113, and it may be minor because the report's very thorough in terms of what are kind of the major risks, but it talks there about moisture ingress and just a kind of, there's no detail around that. And maybe this has been covered previously or at committee, but I just want to be assured that that isn't going to be another thing that's going to escalate into something major. Could somebody speak to that, please?
Yeah, I think
Yes,
Colin's able to speak
yes.
to that one. Yeah, thank you.
Certainly. So we became aware during the construction process, as normal with Climate of Scotland, that there had been, during the early stages, moisture ingress before the building was fully sealed, before it was watertight is the terminology. And we, at that stage within the project team, along with the contractor, implemented a water ingress management policy. And essentially that policy was advising the contractor what must happen in the event when rain or water got into the building. And essentially that was zero tolerance, strip out and replace any constructions which are wetted. That is fine as long as you can understand and document every single incident. And in some instances, water may have got into the building which we weren't aware of. And there may have been instances which predated that management plan also. And that had been raised as a concern by our IPC colleagues. Since then, the project board set up a subgroup to the project board to look at this issue specifically and to look at the risk that may bring in terms of the effects of water ingress. And that's looked at it from two perspectives. One is the development of mould or the impact on the fire integrity of the constructions within the building. And we've engaged quite extensively with NHS Scotland Assure. This is uncharted territory because albeit there has been water ingress in probably every single hospital that's been constructed, this is the first where it's really been documented and managed. So we're well ahead of the situation there. But there is always the risk that we have something that we can't visibly see at this moment in time that comes to fruition in the future. So the recommendations that we're looking at this stage is that we will carry out some advanced surveillance of the environments to identify if there is any escalation or inflation of levels which shouldn't be in the internal environment. And the intention at this stage is we do that in advance of the commissioning and validation of the building. Now that normally comes just before we take occupation of the building, but what we're saying is we'll do that in advance of that as a secondary precautionary measure, so that if we do find something, then we can go back and identify the location and effectively undertake some remedial work to the building as last resort. But it should give us some information in relation to whether or not the concerns that have been raised are as extensive as suspected, and whether or not there needs to be remedial works undertaken to the building. In addition to that, we have employed the services of a clinical mycologist, Dr. Malcolm Richardson from the University of Manchester, to give advice on that front. And he has been assessing the methodology, the approach that we're taking to this, and decisions will be taken by the project board. So what I would say to you, John, in response to your question, is every single building that will be built in Scotland is likely to be affected by moisture ingress. It's the management of that moisture ingress and the remedial works that follow on from that. And I think the assurance I can give the board is we've done everything that we possibly can, but there is always the eventuality that we've missed something, unfortunately, and that's the risk that we take here. And in order to reduce that, we've implemented this precautionary measure.
Okay, if I can, Chair, thank you for that, and that sounds very thorough. So I suppose at this point, just ask that, in summary, key points from that are captured in the minute in terms of this particular assurance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's an important point to do that. It also sounds like there's going to be important learning from this as well, to be shared more widely across Scotland and further afield as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think we can take the assurance that the actions are being taken that need to be taken from what Colin said there as well. Okay, I can't see any other questions arising from anyone on the board. So can I just thank Colin and Nick for their presentation there, and turn to the recommendations in the paper. We're invited to review and scrutinise the information provided in the paper, confirm that it provides assurance that the policies and processes necessary are in place and robust. To note progress with the Baird Family Hospital and the Anchor Centre project, specifically an update on the key matters as listed in the recommendations, and future reporting. To note that completion dates and the final project forecast will feature in future reporting to the Baird and Anchor project on the Baird and Anchor project, when the full impact of all the changes has been reported by the contractor. Are we happy to agree those recommendations? I'm not allowed to use the word happy, am I, Derek? Are we content to agree those recommendations? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Then we're changing the order of the agenda now, you'll remember, and we're moving now to item 11, the Operational Improvement Cancer Delivery Plan against a 31 and 62-day performance, 25-26. And I'm turning to Paul Baku for this, please. Paul.
Okay, thank you, Chair and colleagues. Online with us, we have our cancer performance lead, Saskia Pryor, and Jeanette Matheson, our cancer lead nurse. I'm going to take a little bit of time to give a bit of a cover, an overview of the paper, because it is complex and it's been part of multiple discussions so far. So previously at the board, in our How We Doing report, at the last meeting, I acknowledged that our cancer performance remained below the national targets, and importantly, below our own expectation. At that meeting, I stated that work was in progress for plans that, if funded, would significantly improve on the position by the end of the financial year, so March 25-26. Today, I'm able to report that the work of the teams to date has been received very favourably by Scottish Government, and all of our bids have now been funded in their full. So within the report that's been submitted, there is the outline of the funded operational improvement plan, which is underpinned by one of the appendices, which is the refreshed framework for effective cancer management. A lot of the funding and the planning has been very much directed by the data analysis and the data analytics from our own effective breach analysis. It's through this approach that we have asked for funding to be directed to the key areas where we know there is flow limiting blockage. The plans have been coordinated with teams, and the trajectories agreed with teams, and critically challenged by Scottish Government prior to the funding. And just for context, the planning and the discussions and the sharing of plans and trajectories started very early in January, and it wasn't until towards the end of May and even to the end of just this last week that all of the funds have been confirmed and approved. So of importance, there are two specific areas I would direct committee members to consider in the paper that's been outlined. The first one is that in setting these trajectories, which will be managed on a weekly basis going forwards, not quarterly, weekly basis going forwards, both for cancer and to a lesser degree, but equally for planned care, there has been, I would say, more focus on the modelling and scenario testing before submitting our trajectories than I have been involved with over the last couple of years in terms of planned care, be it cancer or non-cancer. The modelling has very much taken into account our capacity and trajectories over the last 2 to 3 years. The averages for each month over that period of time have then been modified and remodified and modified again by our clinical teams and our operational management teams. The averages that we've got are then being checked against predictable times of the year where through either seasonal variation or through statutory public holidays and annual leave, we're able to integrate the impact of that time down. So this, together with initiatives that are coming in and going out of quality improvement programs from the CFSD, have very much influenced the numbers that we've used in our trajectories through to the end of next year. Now, the second point that I think is really worth thinking through is around our cancer tracking team. This team has been recognised nationally for the work and the high quality of the work that they do. They sit in the back rooms, away from the front line, but this team, for want of a better phrase, is our air traffic control system. This team proactively micromanages the path and the route and the flow of individual patients through what is becoming an increasingly complex, integrated network of service provision. Some of the discussions earlier on, I think Colette, you mentioned about the Out of Health Board. So the team are very much involved in this micromanagement level of flow. They are proactively recognizing where things could be blocked. They are responding reactively with clinical teams to make changes where blocks have occurred. And unlike previously with targeted resources, we now have mitigations of how to do the unblocking, because now we have the additional money, as has been described in the paper. We have additional capacity in other areas. So now we are not dependent on singular paths for resolving blocks or avoiding blocks. So the board is asked to take this into account. It's asked for assurance that you are content with the alignment of our funds to plans for improving performance. And there are, I think, several areas of noting. Firstly, the split of funding and the total funding into recurring and non-recurring. The plan is reactive, I admit, and it's responding to a national instruction. It does achieve 95% 31-day performance. It achieves 85% performance on the 62-day pathway, provided we deliver the plan. And it recognises the challenges going forwards. And we are planning to submit follow-up reports to PAFIC as the committee for our progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was really helpful run through. And can I just say it's a really helpful paper as well, very clear in laying everything out as well. So really appreciate being able to read that and study that as well. It was very useful in preparing for the committee. Derek, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would agree, Alison, a really good paper. A few things. Really welcome the projected performance trajectories. They look very good. And I'm assuming that we have the theatre and the bed capacity to be able to achieve that. The increasing recurring funding against non-recurring funding, I think, is also welcome. It gives you the assurance that you can carry on and achieve. But I have a couple of questions. On several pages, we talk about there's been an increase in referrals. And I was just wondering why. And within that, the percentage who are being diagnosed with cancer is going down, but the total number of people being diagnosed with cancer, is that stable? Is it up? Is it down? Given the increase in referrals, what actually is happening with the people with cancer? And the second one was the urology. And the question is, will the new SURE Centre further create improvements to the 62-day standard? Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Paul, do you want to respond, please?
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you, Derek, for the questions, and thank you for generously acknowledging the work of the clinical teams and the operational teams in the paper submission. I think the first question around, just to confirm, we have the capacity, we are modelled and we are trajectorying on what we can deliver. We've taken it down to a very sort of a basic level of we can do this provided we have at least 60 planned care beds, regardless of what happens in surge in unplanned care. So as much as we can, we have accounted for the variation across each month that occurs with flow in lots of different queues. The funding profile, I agree, it is very welcome and gives us a bit of sustainability and deliverability into the medium term. The increase in referrals, there is no doubt from the Chief Medical Officer's report and other many significant national reports that the population of the health is changing and it is getting worse. Lord Darcy, in his report only 6 months ago, made big references to the population health, and I'm sure Susan and others online may be wanting to add to that. There is also an increasing in complexity of ill health for more than one pathology, and that multiple sort of pathologies interacting, producing ill health, is where I think a lot of the challenge in some of the guidelines and some of the tests that are used in vetting and referral triaging is occurring, because the overall conversion rate to cancers has not shown a parallel increase as demonstrated in one of the graphs I think that we've included. So there is that. There is work in hand looking at resetting parameters at which thresholds are exceeded and possibly indicative of cancer, and that's a national piece of work, and we look forward to that because I think that may improve the specificity and the positive predictor value of referrals into the system, but that is ongoing work. I think we also have to acknowledge that across the country, the impacts of media and celebrities and sharing their stories to increase awareness has an impact on referral rates and culture and referral practices. And lastly, I think one of the other things that we're beginning to understand is that lots more people can refer patients into secondary care with diagnoses of cancers or urgent suspected cancers. It's not the traditional gatekeeping function solely of general practitioners. There are many other people in those practices that see and are able to see patients and make referrals. So I think it's a complex picture with lots of things from biology to referral practice that are influencing the demand at the front door. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Derek, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. Just the last bit on the.
Oh yeah, sorry, sure.
Is SURE going to help? Yep.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. I forgot. I got carried away in the first block. Yeah, it will do. It will do, but it is highly unlikely. Well, it's not going to affect our trajectories in this current financial year. Going forward, it will do. And I think what we will be looking at is the second phase of our plan in where do we go out with our health board looking for capacity for the urological cancer. I think I touched on the earlier how we're doing report for colorectal screening and possibly alternative pathways for colonoscopies at the Golden Jubilee, and possibly surgery if that's where the pathway goes as advised by our teams. So the SURE project will help, not in this financial year, and that's what I would leave it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think the first answer you gave to Derek there is something that maybe would benefit from that benchmarking we talked about, in where there are increased referrals that we see is the same in other areas as well. Maybe that's one of the examples from our previous discussion about the value of benchmarking as well, to see if we are experiencing something in line with everyone else or not. I think that might be helpful as well. Derek, are you happy? I move on now. Thank you.
Yeah, very happy with that. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark, please.
I kept my hand up, although actually Derek stole some of my thunder with regards to some of my questions with regards to, the increase in referrals, and obviously Paul's given a comprehensive answer to that already. The other question I would like to ask, and he almost touched on this one as well, is on the collaboration with other regional health boards in providing capacity in surge times. I work in a service, Paul, as you know, that often seems to have surges in referrals and cancer, and then we find it difficult to flex around the targets to hit those things, where other times we're very quiet, and having that ability to flex I think is really important. And how can we understand how that can happen, and where does digital play into the referral pathway? Certainly looking at dermatology, for instance, those aspects of good vetting is really important to allow people to understand whether it is a cancer that's being referred in or not. So just a couple of points or questions. You've answered some of them already. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Paul?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. And I think the whole sort of concept of managing and controlling flow at a rate that allows you to move into the capacity vacated, getting that sort of in and out right, is definitely where we need to do, and digital will help in making pre-operative assessments quick, so that you've always got a large number of people ready to choose from, because at the moment we have a definite shortage in the ability to pre-operatively assess large groups of people and keep them held in a place that we can pick from. So that's definitely an issue, and digital will help. We unfortunately weren't funded for our digital plan, but we have, we're still pushing that. The scheduling software that will come in later in the year towards October, that will help for sure, because it'll allow you again to pick a patient ready from the list at short notice and bring them in on the day of procedure. And then I think we have to acknowledge that the flow of people in and out of a list is dependent on the capacity and the context and what else is happening in the world at the time. And therefore, the work that we're doing with Geraldine and June and everybody else around managing flow in the unscheduled care is definitely another part of the process. We have the same problems as everybody else, so it is not unique to us. Hopefully that answers the questions, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Colette, please.
Hi, Paul. I just want to congratulate you and the team on the quality of the paper, which was really excellent to read, and also on your success in securing the funding to take this forward. I'm sure that took a lot of time and effort to get it, so very well done. I've got two questions. One is on the plan itself. You refer to one of the risks as being the non-recurring funding. So assuming that the targets are met by 2026, what do you think is likely to happen then? Will there be other opportunities to secure additional non-recurring funding, if you see what I mean? Or does that mean that things will start to slip backwards? So that's question number one. Question number two is on the numbers themselves. I sit on the Aberdeenshire IJB, and I'm interested in the table in Appendix 9, but I'm not quite sure if I'm making sense of it, which shows that Aberdeenshire has the highest percentage of USC referrals, backlog and conversion to a cancer diagnosis. I'd be really interested if you've got any thoughts on why that is.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'll take the first question first. I think one of the things that we have always been aware of and had communications with around the non-recurring money is that if our approach is that we're only going to rely on the capacity created by non-recurring money, then as soon as it finishes April the 1st, we will bounce back and within a very short period of time, because that's what happens here. In a short period of time, a disturbance from an equilibrium point causes a negative position. So we have become very aware of that. So I think the key thing is that in parallel to this sort of recovery, the work in improving pathways, the work that we're doing through the interface group in primary care and understanding referrals and avoiding referrals, the work that we're doing with Robert Lockhart and Valerie and others in the early start career GPs to use their skill sets in adding capacity. The work that we're doing in modernizing pathways, the digital innovations, the genetic genotyping assessments, all of those things are essentially making it more possible to be precise and selective and positively predict that the person that you bring into the clinic is the person that needs to come to the clinic and progress through the pathway. And I think some of the linkages that we're now, we are now going to pursue out with the health board and those relationships that I referred to earlier on, I think we need to really consider them as part of our network of our service provision. And there's some very exciting opportunities coming our way with the daycare surgical unit and with work around the Dr. Gray's Hospital in how we put all of those individual spokes together with the hub differently. So hopefully we won't bounce back. And I think the second question was around the numbers. I don't think I do not have the detailed understanding of this variation that we've identified for this presentation today. The one thing I would say is there are lots of things that will go through people's minds. Is it related to primary care? Is it related to unscheduled flow? Is it related to demographics? Is it related to a relatively large increase in the older population? Is it gender based? I just don't have I think the scientific rigor around the inquiry to say to you, A, B, and C are the reasons.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Are you content, Colette, with those answers?
Yes, thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. John, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It kind of follows on because I think what this highlights is some really good work around the pathway, some links to other pathways, and we've touched on unscheduled care, the unplanned care. Adam's explained how making improvements on that pathway, but not yet impacting on key headlines. And in here, as Paul's articulated, if we keep to 60 beds, then that's a key part of it. And so I think there's something here about the information that we're getting needing to be fed into, and I don't have any immediate answer to this, but doing that thing that we've mentioned many times, which is a whole system approach, which is based on the populations of Grampian. So I'm thinking, being on the Aberdeenshire IJB, although we've got to sort of find a way of meeting our financial reductions, but we know that can have an impact on delayed discharges, which can have an impact on the bed base, which can have an impact on planned care. I think we now need to seriously find a way to have some of that joint drawing up on these pathways so that we get more end-to-end or across the relevant ones and not doing it in pieces. So it's maybe just a statement that we need to find a way to have those discussions, probably at both an executive level and through the relevant boards. Otherwise, we'll be looking at this again and then wondering why we haven't made that traction. So I would ask, I think, for the executive team to give advice to us on how we can have those conversations, so that we can do this differently going forward and build on what's been some really good work that's been presented here.
No, I think that's a really important point, John, about how we actually move forward and transform. We do things differently, and we achieve better outcomes as a result of doing that as well. And I think I'd like to bring either June or Adam in to comment on that, but I've seen Paul's put his hand up first. So Paul first, and then June or Adam afterwards. Thank you.
Sorry, my hand was a mistake, and I'll let June that. Not let,
well, Adam's put his hand up, so I'll turn to Adam then. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You were prompting me to remember some work we did, pre-COVID, and I can't remember the name of the software, but it mapped a whole system, and it was a dynamic modeling system. So it had sort of, digital people moving through a system, and it showed up where queues were and the impact of other queues on different queues. So if you resolve this little bit here, what does it do to this queue and this queue and this queue? And I wonder if we need to sort of dig out that, or the modern version of that, to actually understand the impact of things. So again, when we have a conversation about delayed discharge, it's very evident there's about 60 delayed discharges in Forester Hill at the moment. That clearly has an impact. That's a couple of wards of people, but I'm not sure we understand the dynamic nature of that and the scale of that challenge, because it's a complex dynamic system. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that, understanding the model, and maybe that's the format that you share as a group of people, so that it's really clear what this bit of the system doing A, B or C has on the other bits. Because at the moment we speak, as Paul was saying, we're using data better and better and better all the time in many things, but actually joining it together is the key bit. So when we speak about delayed discharge with Aberdeenshire, it's in the absence of the dynamic understanding of what that does. It's kind of a bit blunt, and I wonder if that will be much more impactful. And I'm kind of looking at Susan, because it was through Health Intelligence that we did that. But I think it's a really good point, John. Really good point. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the commitment to actually doing that kind of work, rather than actually looking at the how for now of the who in a meeting like this. But it's the commitment that's what we need to do going forward, and obviously and the assurance that the work to find the appropriate model to do it appropriately will be carried out. I think that's the key bit for now, rather than looking at a specific way of doing it. But Susan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, and just to reassure, we've already asked for this piece of work to be undertaken on the back of a previous discussion. I guess it's one of these things that it is easier to say and more difficult to do in terms of the variables. Health Intelligence are giving that some thought at the moment, and a proposal will come back to the Chief Exec's team, just so that we can agree what the art of the possible is. The caveat around all of this is clearly the work that we've described throughout the morning all requires Health Intelligence capacity. So it will take us a bit of time to deliver this, but just to give you assurance, it's on the radar. I understand it's also going to be included as part of the route map, and we will, once we've got the commission, be able to give the board a robust timeline in which we're able to deliver it.
Thank you very much, Susan. And Hugh as well, please.
Yeah, I was just to add, really, just very thoughtful about John's exhortation to us there, and I fully agree with it. So in the last 72 hours, Paul and I have been engaging very closely with the medical director of Scottish Ambulance Service in a similar conversation about balancing risk across Scottish Ambulance Service, front door inpatient facilities and IJBs, and we're in the process of trying to pull together a meeting of all of those stakeholders in the very near future to consider those. And I think what I'm struck by from what John says is actually the really intimate relationship between that unscheduled pathway and the planned care pathway, and therefore as I'm thinking about the how of what we do, that we need to very much factor that data in as well. So just really, John, to acknowledge your input, thank you for it, and hopefully provide a little assurance that this you know, that this type of thinking and type of collaboration is in our minds and in our active planning at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. I think that in the active planning is the key bit rather than in minds. I think that commitment to actually have it as part of the planning, the transformation, the route map, as Susan mentioned as well, that's the key bit rather than you know, the thoughts that it's important. So John, is that helpful?
It is. I mean, I understand you saying not get into the how, but for me, this is a critical point of going from intent that we've talked about for a long time to actually getting into the how. And whilst we'll see something come back, I do think that as non-execs, I'd like to see how that is starting to shape up, because we have to then handle that within other boards like the IJBs and the decision making there, and we need to be able to land it with people. Yeah. I'm assured by what Adam and Hugh are saying, and look forward to seeing that progress on it in early course. Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you. My point about the how now was we can't analyse a particular model now and how we're doing it in this meeting. But yeah, I totally take your point there, and maybe that's an action for us as well to ensure this comes back to us in due course as part of the transformation work, that we can see that coming forward, and that joined up work as we move forward. So if we can put that as an action as well, please, Alison, that would be helpful, and in due course to see that. Obviously, health intelligence capacity is key to that as well. Okay, well, thank you for that. I can't see any other comments made by anyone here, so I think we can move to the recommendations on the cancer plan. Review and scrutinise the information as detailed in the recommendation that we've got in front of us. To note that some of the improvement activity for improvement in trajectories is funded by non-recurring funding, and that poses a risk of sustained improvement. Note the achievement of the national standards is assessed across the whole of the whole group of pathways, not against each individual pathways. And then we're noting where we'll be by March 26 in terms of the standards. And note that the cancer activity plan has been developed to deal with the current backlog of activity rather than population health needs assessment and future demands. And note that the assurance on performance against the trajectories in Appendix 7 will go to PAFIC at mid and year-end points, and that the chair of the committee will agree the exact reporting dates with the acute medical director. That's the a chair of PAFIC, obviously, for which reported to there. Okay, can we agree those recommendations then, please? And thank Paul again and the team for the report that we've got there as well. Thank you. And now we're turning back to item 10, which is the financial plan and medium-term financial framework integrated impact assessment of operational savings. And I'm going to turn to Alex, please, to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So there's 3 distinct parts to this paper, and I'll just kind of briefly highlight those to you. So the first part of this paper is really an update to the board on the 2024-25 financial position, which showed an improved position against our forecast. So we did start to see some improvement in our financial position in the last quarter of last financial year, which was welcome, and a result of some of the good work that had been taken in relation to the value and sustainability programme that we had in place over that time period. The second aspect to this report is really in relation to the request for £23 million of budget savings and budget reductions, and to update the board in relation to the letter that we sent to the Scottish Government in that regard. So you can see within that table, within there, there's 4 or 5 items that calculate back to that £23 million. And you know, we've gone through that process over the last couple of months to get us to that space. So that's the first, really, the first two aspects of the report. And I just wonder, once we finish my introduction, whether it might be worthwhile just taking those before we get into the quality impact assessments. The third aspect is, we discussed at the last board meeting, was I was requested to bring back a the full equality impact assessments on some of the savings that we had identified in our original financial plan. So if you remember, within our original financial plan, we had a number of savings within there, and the board requested that I bring those equality impact assessments back. So I would highlight that we've done that, and we've got a summary of those impact assessments within the paper, and the Chief Executive team continue to work with services to mitigate any implications within these equality impact assessments. Throughout the report, the financial risks are highlighted, and having identified the £23 million of budget reductions, you will see in the report that our ability to manage any in-year movements will be reduced, and I think it's important that I highlight this to the board. So it's not easy to identify that sort of level of budget reductions. We have achieved that, but our flexibility throughout the year to deal with any in-year movements is reduced as a result of that. Chair, the relevant executives are happy to answer any questions on the details of their savings, and Paul's already given us the information on the cancer pathway, but in the conversations I've had with Paul, he has indicated that the impact of the public holidays won't impact on the targets which have been agreed with the Scottish Government in relation to planned care. So I just thought it would be worthwhile highlighting that at the outset. So Chair, happy to pass back over to you and to take any questions, as are my colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And before we actually look at any aspect of this, I would like to draw attention to one of the savings you've got there in the equality impact page. I know you said we wanted to do the first section first, but I think it's important to state this at the outset before discussion. The saving that you've got around nappies there, which has huge implications for certain people who are needing that kind of support when they're coming to hospital, and yet the saving associated with it from the board's point of view is actually relatively small. I think we have a priority around child poverty. It's something we're trying to address. We also know that sometimes people will be coming to hospital to have a baby when maybe weren't expecting at that point in time. So maybe it's a case of just not being prepared when the moment comes. And so I think, are we actually trying to take a saving here which is going to be more negative than supportive to our overall system? And is it something that we could maybe not take, but would you be able to find the financial saving elsewhere if we didn't include this going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Yes, I have been having discussions with the service in regard to the savings over the last couple of days, and we've discussed the service coming forward with a compensatory saving to match the value of that saving. So I think on that basis, I would be looking to amend the recommendations to the report to take that into account.
Thank you for that, Alex. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn to everyone else and might have questions or comments about this report as well. Any comments from colleagues, please? Derek.
Hi, thank you. Just a general comment on the public holiday stuff. A few years ago, there was talk about moving to a 7-day-a-week NHS. So are we taking a step back? And since we have a national health service, what's the situation in other health boards now? I understand that one of our near health boards already do this, but what's the situation across Scotland? And given that we're looking at savings on things, I didn't know what depot intramuscular medication and service provision was. So if somebody could explain what that particular saving is. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn first to Alex and then.
If Philip is here, he may be able to give a little bit more information, but on the approach taken by other boards. But yeah, we do understand some other boards don't follow the approach that we're suggesting within here does follow some of the arrangements within the other boards. But I'm not sure if we've got a full run through of exactly what's happening in every board in that space, but certainly if Philip's still on the call, he may be able to give some background to that. And Paul and Fiona, I think, might be on, who can give a little bit more information on the IM depot.
Thank you. Philip is here, so I'll bring Philip in on that point, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. So in terms of running services on public holidays, it is incredibly expensive. So in terms of the national terms and conditions for the agenda for change staff, it's effectively double time and a day off in lieu. So almost the equivalent of triple time for running a services on public holiday. So if we can seek to not do that, then that's a saving. Those are national terms and conditions that all employees in NHS Scotland have the benefit of. So there is consistency across Scotland for that. What I can't comment on is the extent to which other services and other boards choose to run on a public holiday or not, I'm afraid. But in terms of that consistency of payment and remuneration for public holidays, we are absolutely consistent across Scotland.
Yeah, I suppose it's something that's also fluid across other boards as they're all considering their own financial plans as well. So it's something that's being considered elsewhere as in addition. Okay, and on Alex's other point, I fancy Fiona indicating, who was it, Alex, you thought could answer?
Yeah, it was either Fiona, Paul, or I think June might know something, might you have some more information on this one as well, but I see June's got her hand up.
June, thank you, June.
Yeah, thank you. So in relation to deeper injections, my understanding, Derek, this is from the mental health services. So some individuals require an injection on a regular basis. And that is the way that service has been delivered has been looking to be redesigned so it's done in a more community-based way. And my understanding is, my questions around it is to ensure that we have a robust evaluation of that so that no patients are being missed or they're not getting their treatment in a timely way as we would expect. So that's what that is in relation to. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to come in on that point? No, I thought so. Mark, please, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks very much. And I can't shy away. There were some concerns raised by GP subcommittee and area medical committee regarding the change in this service. They had some concerns about this vulnerable group of patients that may or may not be missed off. And obviously, I think it'll be very important, as June indicates there, that it's kept under very close review. Some of these patients have got lifestyles that make continuity of services is very much more important to them than others. And so we would just be very mindful of that any mitigations or that's kept under close review, and we raised some concerns around that. Thank you.
Yeah, June, can you give that assurance that the review will be very timely, appropriate, and detailed in order to make sure no patients suffer? Thank you.
And my understanding is that is the case, Mark, that they are working with patients. Because there is a group that they will know, and there will be regular people to that service. So they're working with them to ensure that they are not, as you describe, losing out an opportunity to have their treatment in a timely way and continue to be working alongside the services.
Thank you. Thank you, June. Mark, do you want to come back?
So yeah, I'd just like to be updated on that as we go forward, please, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, can we put that as an action as well, please, Alison, to update on that going forward, please? I think that's an important point. It's been raised by others. Thank you. Richie. Oh, sorry, Derek. I need to come back to you. Derek, you raised the point originally. Derek.
Yeah, I'm happy with the answers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You created a bit of discussion there, didn't you, Derek? So thank you for that. Thank you. Richie, please.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. It's just from my earlier question around by far the biggest part of the £23 million is the £12 million reduced financial risk provision for IJBs. So just keen to get some additional commentary on that, perhaps from Alex and Judith. Appreciating that Judith can't talk completely around the city and the Shire, but just some extra assurance about the realism of that would be very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll bring Alex first and then Judith, if she can carry on as well, please. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, the provision that we put in there previously, I mean, we did have a prudent provision, I think is how I described it in my last paper, because at that point in time we were waiting to see what the impact of what the savings and what was coming through the integration joint boards. So now that we've got that and also had the end of the financial year, this provision closely matches what the position was at the end of the financial year for the IJBs. So what we'd be looking for is an improvement in that position from where it was at the end of the financial year. The budget plans that they've put up have shown an improved position as well, but we've still got a little bit in there in case there is any movements as a result of that, particularly given last year some of the IGBs still had some reserves yet left that they were using in that space. So we have kind of taken, reassessed our risk in that space, and I don't anticipate that there'll be further savings that are required beyond what's already been agreed as a result of the decision that we are making today. Obviously, as the year goes on, I don't know what will happen in relation to how things might move, but certainly what we are doing is now closer matching the provisions that and the financial forecasts of the IGBs.
Yeah, thank you. Alex, Judith, would you like to add anything, or is that?
Yes, if I may, Chair, and I think Alex has covered that. I think the important thing is going to be how we monitor that through the year, because obviously, and one of the things that challenges us in our partnerships is often the in-year movement, particularly if we see some significant new packages of care that we need to cover and manage those risks. But I think the conversations that we have with our funding partners, just in terms of our ability to predict and report those movements, is just going to be really important in how we manage that position.
Thank you, Judith. Richie, assured by this? Thank you. Okay, John, please.
Thank you. Yeah, it follows on quite nicely from what Richie's said. Thank you for the paper. And I'd mentioned earlier in the meeting about 3-year approach to the recovery plan, and it's a similar ask, I think, to what just been talking about previously on getting the pathways and getting into an operational way of how to do what has been intent. So, I mean, our experience in Aberdeenshire with the IJB is trying to do recovery in the in-year, in the current year, is very, very fraught and not satisfactory for anybody. And so getting into a 3-year approach to this, again, it's something that we talk about, but we need to give ourselves something to hang it on, so that we actually shift this. And similar to the discussion that Adam and Hugh brought in on pathways as a tangible way for that earlier discussion, I would suggest that maybe the executives can think about the medium-term financial strategies of the different boards, and for us to be able to see explicitly how those can align. And that's not taking away from the governance of each of the boards, but from the point of view that we need to be able to see how they align over the 3 years, so that we can do this sensibly for the workforce, but also for the public, or should I say, as sensibly as we can, given the pressures. So maybe it's a different way of doing it, but I would like to see something tangible come back, whether it's around those financial strategies or not. And the other point I would make is I'd like something minuted here around this, because that assurance board that's going to come in and the diagnostics that are done is all going to report before people get hold of this further report on possibly a 3-year approach. And I would like this board to be saying that is our intent, and we are developing a way of actually doing it. It's a simple point, but I think I would like to see us getting in on the front foot on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Don. That's our direction of travel, isn't it, from what we've been trying to encourage this year, but it takes it that step further and is more constructive and helpful as we think about the overall budgets as well. So yeah, I think that point needs to be minuted here as well. So Alison, focus on that in as you're writing the minutes as well. But Alex, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, some of the work that I've been doing over the last 3 months or 2 months has been looking at that longer term aspect in terms of the 3 years. I do take John's point is that we need to link that up with the IGBs and see where their financial plans are taking us in that time as well. I do think that, how the diagnostic's been described may pull out some things that I think John's kind of talking about there in relation to pathways. We've also got the other work that we're doing in that pathway space as well. So I think when we get, when we see that 3-year recovery plan, we need to be thinking about each of those and how they're going to impact. And I think I think what we've done traditionally is a lot of detail in year 1 and maybe not so much detail in relation to years 2 and 3. And I think that's the point that John's making in that space, is giving ourselves a little bit more clarity on our direction in relation to our financial recovery in those places in those years, which is welcome and certainly something that we'll be looking to move forward.
Yeah, I think the point as well is it's going to be our recovery plan and something that we need to act on. So we need to have everything involved in it that we know will be effective and think about that sustainability going forward. And this is something that we've clearly identified in our way of working, in that longer term thinking or medium term thinking that we need to focus on, and to have people working together collaboratively in order to achieve that system sustainability, being cognizant of different governance systems, of course, but that system sustainability within that going forward. So I think, yeah, if we can see that as we progress, it's a step beyond what we've been doing already, but it's in the direction of travel we've been on. So progressing that, I think, would be helpful. So thank you, John, for bringing that to the table as well.
If I just before we leave that, I think because it highlights how we can start to try to do things more with people rather than to people, because that's where you end up if you're doing things in year. And I think that's what everybody, is wanting. So I think very much welcome what Alex is saying. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for emphasising that too. Thanks, John. Colette, please.
Thanks, Alison. My comments relate specifically to those proposals that required the detailed integrated impact assessments. And I just want to thank Alex for that further kind of clarification on the cancer pathway, particularly, because it was good to have that reassurance that what's being proposed here won't impact on the work that Paul was describing earlier. So thank you for that. Thanks also for the more detail on these integrated impact assessments. There's obviously a greater focus on them, and it's good to see the detail of those. So with all of that in mind, none of us want to take these decisions lightly. Are the team confident that the impact of these proposals will be minimal and, where necessary, mitigated?
Thank you for that, Colette. Alex, do you want to come in? Or,
well, I'll maybe pass over to Paul in the first instance, but we can certainly talk about the mitigations.
Paul, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in principle, Colette, I think we can definitely minimise the impact on our trajectories, because we account for that in our modelling. But I think the key thing here is not the trajectories, it's the people. So what we really got to do is to develop the work of the cancer trackers, but that requires additionality, and it's that bespoke team that will be able to coordinate individuals who are slightly below or behind a timeline to the availability of resource. And it's going to become particularly important, and it's a great opportunity as more capacity opens up across Scotland. Now, that will of course have its own challenges, and I think the key here is that coordination and the synchronization of individuals to capacity out with our health board, because I think that's where we're going to be looking for. That's the real big opportunity here to get people treated. We know they don't mind going and traveling, provided we support them and it's a good product. So I think we have to a degree for those sorts of instances, and I'm sure there will be things that we've come up with that we haven't considered yet for others.
Thank you. Colette, do you want to come back?
Yeah, that was really helpful on the cancer proposal. I mean, I think my question was really across all of these, and you yourself have highlighted some of the issues around the proposal on newborns and nappies, etc. So it's just to have that reassurance that these proposals will be mitigated and considered if we agree to them.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the first important stage is that they've been recognised, that we've got the impact assessments in front of us, that the issues have been recognised, and that's the first stage to be able to plan where we go forward, I think, as well. Stuart, do you want to come in on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Alison. I guess having been around the impact assessment process, to just offer a few observations, if that's okay. I think the first thing, which I know I've remarked on before, but is worth bearing in mind, is obviously the services themselves have come to the table with the ideas rather than them being sort of dictated to them. I think there's more work to be done on the mitigations, but certainly what they have embraced is that kind of transparent decision making, that we're entering into these savings, acknowledging that there will be impacts and we'll mitigate them as far as we can. Some, many of the impact assessments describe what those mitigations could look like, whether it's better signposting, but we know the need doesn't go away. So I think that's recognised, and that's to be worked through by the individual services around the individual savings. But I think what the process overall shows and highlights for all of us really is that these savings have been achieved by lots and lots of smaller savings, rather than there being, very many, large savings in the system that you can just suddenly take out. But I suppose it shows the services being very aware of that and alive to that, and supporting us in that, making that decision. So I guess that's just a sort of reflection on having gone through the process with the services. We have been joined by Rhoda Bird, who's the Equality and Diversity Manager as well, who's been supporting the services in filling out those impact assessments. If there are any questions for Rhoda, thanks.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for that. Thank you. And I think we're on a journey with these impact assessments as well, aren't we? How to complete them and how to react to them and respond as well, either as a board or as individual teams as well. So thank you for that. Colette, is that helpful?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think we've got to think about this in this sort of context of what we were discussing earlier about the level 4 escalation. The Scottish Government is asking us to find more savings. So we have to go along with that. Nonetheless, we have to take those decisions in the context of understanding what the impact will be on health and care in the Grampian region. So thank you to Stuart and to Alex and to Paul for those more detailed explanations. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colette. Thank you. Appreciate that. Stephen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. Broadly, you're welcome, and I'm supportive of the paper and the sort of proposed sort of savings, etc. And like others, thank Alex for the and colleagues, for the work done, particularly on the integrated impact assessments. I guess just on the public holiday service reductions, I'd be looking for assurance that where appropriate, we'll be applying all relevant policies, including organisational change, if staff's traditional working patterns are in the process of being changed. I'll pose that question. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a key question as well. Alex, do you want to respond to that one, please?
Yeah, it might be better if Philip comes in on this one.
Okay, Philip.
Yeah, I was just going to put my hand up to that. So when we looked through the total list of savings that was being proposed by all services, of which those requiring an equality impact assessment was a subset, we acknowledged that a number of them would require organisational change. So that's absolutely on the radar, Stephen. So yes, we are considering that, and we wouldn't make a change without going through that organisational change process. But that further reassurance is it was part of the consideration for the full list of potential savings. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think a theme throughout this meeting is that all colleagues are engaged as they should be at the appropriate times as well. I think we've made that clear on several papers. So thank you for that, Philip, as well. Stephen, okay with that?
Yeah, I suspected that was the case, but particularly in a public forum, just wanted to make absolutely sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that as well. Thank you. Okay, I can't see any other indications to speak on the financial recovery paper. Is that where we are? Thank you. So we can turn to the recommendations then. Our decision is to endorse the financial recovery plan, which aims to reduce the forecast deficit for 25-26 to 45 million, and note that a 3-year financial recovery plan to support the board in returning to financial balance is to be developed and reported to the board in October 25. Review and scrutinise the information provided in the paper and confirm it provides assurance that the integrated impact assessment process has been applied to those proposed savings, contributing to the medium-term financial framework. And the decision, obviously we are amending this decision to take into account that the NAPIS saving will be taken out, and the service will be identifying, I think it's 8,000 equivalent savings elsewhere. So with that amendment to approve the savings for which a full integrated impact assessment has been carried out with a total value of 1 million, acknowledging the impacts and mitigations described, but cognizant that positive and negative impacts will result from the delivery of these savings. Are we happy to agree those recommendations, please? Content to agree those recommendations, please. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion on that, and thank you for all the work that lies behind that as well. I know it's been a huge lot of effort across the organisation to get to that stage, so I appreciate that, and to everyone in particular who's developed the impact assessments as well. I really appreciate the work. Okay, turning now to item 12, the primary care property transfers paper. Alan, please.
Thank you, Chair. And this paper's coming to the board today just in regards to looking to change a bit of the process in regards to the approval of these, given we're expecting more to be coming in due to the changes within the GP contracts and the engagement with the primary care providers. I've got Gareth Evans on the call, who is the primary care transition manager, who will talk us through the paper, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions. So I'll pass on to Gareth.
Thank you. Gareth, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, colleagues. As Alan's touched on, the aim of the paper in front of you is to improve our process and give better and fuller foresight of the matter, excuse me, and the pipeline of potential transactions to the board. The context within which we're working all relates heavily towards the Scottish Government's Code of Practice for GP premises, which outlines transitioning away from GPs requiring to own or lease their practice premises, with a transition towards boards taking these over. This will be phased over a 25-year period. So as I say, this will involve NHS Grampian taking over leases or ownership of premises where affordable of GP premises, and supporting primary care sustainability and stability. Some of the key points to note from the papers are governance elements, are standard operating procedures that are in place, which involves working with all our health and social care partnerships and complying with our SORD requirements. Transactions will follow the NHS Scotland Property Transaction Handbook as well, which is supported by our professional advisors in the matter. So we have a service element and a capacity element and a financial layer of scrutiny through all of that. We'll seek to provide annual reporting through the likes of the annual infrastructure plan and PAFIC as well. This will give the board better foresight of what's ahead. Our risk management around this is to stabilise GP services and mitigate the risks that are related to that, to service continuity in our communities. So those are the points to note within the paper. What we're seeking is to provide assurance that diligence and oversight of the process are robust, and to seek delegation from the board to our asset management groups and Director of Finance with annual reporting obligations. I'll stop there for questions and pass back to you. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you very much, Gareth, for that. Any questions or comments about this paper, please? Derek, please.
Thanks. Just a question. The schedule of reserved decisions reserves to the board values over $1 million. Is this superseding that schedule of reserved decisions, or does leases over $1 million still come back to the board? Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. It's helpful. Gareth?
Yeah, we'll be looking for all decisions to be delegated, so the ones over $1 million as well.
Okay with that, Derek?
We're changing then the schedule of reserved decisions, presumably by caveating the £1 million.
Sarah's coming in. Yeah, Sarah's indicated to come in. So do you want to help, Sarah?
No, so what we're doing is we're delegating the authorities under the sword in advance, which is what we do with all with all of the infrastructure proposals in the annual infrastructure plan. So in future, the primary care premises transactions will be included in the annual infrastructure plan, and in that report every April you give delegated authority in advance for everything that's in that plan. So for the remainder of this year, we're adding in property transactions to that delegated authority, and then you will have the list of them in the annual infrastructure plan going forward. So we're not amending the sword, we're giving delegated authority in advance in accordance with the sword, and we're going to list the transactions that delegated authority applies to.
Derek, do you want to come back?
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was clear what we were doing in relation to the sword. Thanks.
No, thank you for encouraging that discussion then. That's been really helpful, Derek. Thank you. Richie, please.
Yeah, again, thanks for the paper. I'm happy with the kind of proposals. And it's implied, I think, within the report, but when the annual report comes back to PAFIC, setting up what's been done in the previous year, it'd be helpful if the financial checks and that kind of financial implications, best value details are contained within that annual report. Again, just for PAFIC's assurance that is gone as planned, if you like, from that best value perspective. I suspect it's already in there, but just extra assurance, and that would be good. Thanks.
Yeah, can you give that assurance? Gareth nodding. Gareth?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richie. Okay, I can't see any other questions or comments about this. No? Okay. Rich, you're not coming back, are you? No, good. So if we turn to the recommendations then, assurance, review and scrutinise the information provided in the paper, confirm it provides assurance that the appropriate policies and procedures will be followed to ensure due diligence and oversight on the primary care property transfers, and the decision we're making delegate authority through asset management group to oversee all primary care property transfers, to direct the Director of Finance, subject to funding being in place, to complete the legal formalities for such transactions approved by AMG on behalf of the board, with an annual report on all transactions approved by AMG presented to PAFIC within the first quarter after the end of the financial year in which the transactions take place. Happy with those? Brilliant, thank you. We'll read those recommendations then as well. Okay, and that takes us into the approved committee forum and IJB minutes reports that we need to go to note here. So just go through these. 13.1, the Clinical Governance Committee of the 11th of February 25. Thank you. The Staff Governance Committee of the 25th of February 25. Thank you. A PAFIC Committee, first of all, the 12th of February 25, and then of the 2nd of April 25. The Population Health Committee of the 28th of February. Thank you. Area Clinical Forum of the 5th of March 25. Thank you. GAPF of the first of all the 20th of March 25. Thank you. And the 17th of April 25. Thank you. And the IJBs, first of all Aberdeen City for the 4th of February 25. 28th of February 25. 18th of March 25. And then Aberdeenshire, 19th of March 25. Thank you. And Murray, 27th of March 25. Okay, thank you. Noted all of those. Item 14 is any other business. I haven't had any other business notified. Just take another opportunity to say thank you to Susan at this point, I think, and for all the years of service to the board from Susan in particular as well. Thank you, Susan. Wish you well going forward. Thank you. And then item 15, the date of the next meeting is the 14th of August 2025. Okay, well, can I thank you all for your participation, your questions, your scrutiny, the assurance throughout the whole meeting today. I'm really thank you for all you've contributed to the meeting, and I think we've got some good outcomes as a result of this as well, and lots of work ahead as well. But obviously we have a direction, we have opportunity, and let's take the opportunity to sustain our health and care across North East of Scotland, and to support the staff delivering and the patients receiving as well. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.